I don't know a ton about paid ads. I'm not necessarily great at organic social media, and my SEO skills are just okay. But if there's one thing that I'm really good at, it's email marketing. And thankfully, that's exactly what we're going over in this full course. If you're wondering why you should listen to me, in just over the last 3 years, I've set up email marketing for more than 37 and 8-figure brands. And the emails that I've sent are directly attributable for more than $50 million in revenue and have helped dozens of e-com brands scale profitably. So if you're just looking for a quick tip or some email marketing hacks, this probably isn't going to be the best video for you. But if you're genuinely serious about building a real, proven, working email marketing system and you're going to immediately implement it, then keep watching. Here's what we're going to cover in this course: why you actually need email marketing in the first place, what good email marketing actually looks like, how to grow your list as fast as possible, the overarching email strategies that you need if you want to be successful, the exact Klaviyo account setup process that you need to follow for proper attribution, tracking, and compliance, how to make sure your emails actually land in your subscribers' inboxes instead of spam, how to set up your Klaviyo brand settings for consistent design, all the different email campaigns that you need to be sending on a consistent basis for maximum conversions, the advanced Klaviyo features that most brands don't know about, everything you need to know about email copywriting and email design, every automated flow that you need to set up for your brand, and how to actually technically set these up properly in your account, how to read your analytics in your account and optimize accordingly, how to integrate all of your other apps with Klaviyo, and finally, the advanced strategies that you need to implement if you want to see the absolute best results possible. By the end of this video, my simple promise to you is that you will have everything that you need to generate way more revenue from email than you are right now, and have email work 10 times harder for you in the back end. First off, if you're watching this video, then I can tell you're already looking into email marketing. Maybe you've set up your Klaviyo account, but here's why you really need to be taking email marketing seriously in 2025. Contrary to some opinions out there, email marketing is far from dead. I can promise you, with the millions of dollars we're generating from clients every month, email is alive and well. And with that said, email should be driving at least 30% of total revenue for e-commerce brands. So I'm not even talking about 30% of your revenue that's coming from marketing. I mean 30% of all of your Shopify store's revenue. Having a good email marketing backend is going to reduce your customer acquisition costs, because as we're going to see, when you can convert your site visitors that are coming from your paid traffic into email subscribers and then convert them efficiently, it's going to drive your acquisition costs down efficiently and consistently. Email marketing is going to increase your customer lifetime value through more repeat purchases. So instead of just hoping that a customer comes back, you're going to use email to effectively make sure that they come back and buy again. And then finally, focusing on email marketing is going to allow you to build a scalable, owned audience that compounds over time. So if you're solely reliant on Meta ads right now, Google ads, TikTok, you're putting your business in the hands of these companies who have control over the CPMs, or these companies who have control over the algorithms that are ultimately getting people to your website. And if those go away tomorrow, you don't have a way to actually contact your customers and get them back to your site. All right, so before we dive into Klaviyo and make sure we get our account set up properly, if you're an e-commerce brand, you absolutely need to be using Klaviyo to get the maximum results and drive the maximum revenue for your brand, because there's a lot that I'm about to show you throughout this course that is only available on Klaviyo. All right, so whether you've already set up Klaviyo or not, I want you to pay attention right now, because the way that you have Klaviyo set up in your account settings and the backend is actually going to play a significant role in the results that you're able to see. So you want to make sure that you have everything set up properly. So the first thing that we're going to do is go through the account creation and Shopify integration step. All right, so if you haven't created your account, let's go ahead and sign up for one here. All right, so all my information's in. I'm going to click create an account. You should go ahead and select sell products online here. And then you're going to go ahead and select your primary business platform. So for most of you watching, this is probably going to be Shopify. So I'm going to go ahead and click Shopify over here. Then you're going to go ahead and put in your Shopify URL. All right, so if you've previously used an email marketing platform and you're migrating over, so let's say you've used MailChimp as an example and you already have a list, then you would let Klaviyo know how big your list is over here. And if you don't have a list, then you can just say, I don't have contacts yet. So I'll go ahead and say, I don't have contacts yet. You're going to put in your sender name. So when your emails appear in your subscriber's inbox, what do you want it to say? Usually you're going to want it to say your brand name. Some people want to have it say the founder's name. So let's say Elliot at the Dispatch Agency. So you can go ahead and choose either one of those for simplicity. So I'll choose Dispatch, and then the sender email address is going to be this. How do you want to use Klaviyo? So Klaviyo is amazing for email, SMS, push notifications, and reviews. Can't recommend them enough for all of these products. But for the sake of this course, we're just starting with email. All right, so once you sign up, authenticate your account, this is the page you're going to see, and you can see that there is a lot going on here. So let me make this simple for you and make sure you get everything done properly. The next thing we have here is on-site tracking, so that you can actually track events that are happening when people are on your site. So for Shopify, there is a Shopify app embed that happens when you are integrating your account. So essentially, you're just going to have to to toggle that on, and you can simply click this button over here. It will take you into your Shopify theme, and you will just make sure that this is toggled on in your Shopify account. Next, super important, you want to make sure that you're syncing your data from Shopify properly. So here there's a checkbox that says sync your Shopify email subscribers to Klaviyo. So anytime that someone is signing up through a form on your website or at checkout, you want to make sure that they're coming into Klaviyo, and the list that you want them to come into is going to be our main email list. So I'm going to show you in a few minutes how to set up your main email list. At this point, Klaviyo will probably just prompt you to say something like email list, whatever their default is there. You're going to want to make sure that the same way you're syncing your email contacts over from Shopify to Klaviyo, you're doing the same thing for your SMS subscribers. And then finally, there's a checkbox to sync profiles, profile data, and custom properties from Klaviyo to Shopify. There's not really a great reason that most brands have to do this, so you can leave this unchecked. All right, so we're going to check this off here, and this document that I'm going through, which is going to include a really comprehensive checklist and also a lot of great information for you, is going to be available in the link in the description if you want to grab that for yourself. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to head over to our Klaviyo settings, because there is so much in Klaviyo settings that most brands that I audit do not pay attention to and don't even know about. So making sure we have the right settings toggled on here is going to be really advantageous to you. All right, so the first setting that we're going to go to is our Smart Send settings. So what we're going to do is we're going to navigate over to the email section over here, and we're going to go to Sender Preferences. Now you want to make sure that Smart Sending is turned on. So the default is 16 hours typically, but you're going to want to make sure that this is set up properly and optimized for your account. So essentially what Smart Sending means is that if someone receives an email, Smart Send is going to control whether or not they get another email within a certain time frame, because we don't want to bombard people with too many emails in a really short window. I definitely would advise at keeping it at 16 hours, but just so that you know, because every brand is different, this is something that you can customize to your liking. Then you have this checkbox over here, ignore transactional messages. So basically, if someone just places an order and receives a transactional message, that's not a marketing email, do we want them to receive another campaign that they might get at the same time? You can make that decision for yourself. I tend to leave this unchecked for most brands. All right, so we set our Smart Sending window. We're gonna leave this at 16 hours. Next, we're gonna set up our attribution settings. When we're talking about our attribution settings in Klaviyo, we're trying to define at what length after someone receives an email, opens an email, clicks an email, do we want Klaviyo to take credit for the purchase. Klaviyo's default attribution settings are 5-day open and 5-day click, which means that if someone receives an email and opens it, if they place an order at any point within 5 days, they're still going to attribute that purchase to the last email that they opened within 5 days. So it's really important to make sure that you're setting an attribution window that is reflective of your customer journey and how people are actually shopping with you, because this is going to change how you see the performance of all of the different emails that you're sending. And we want to have a real understanding of what emails are actually driving a purchase versus seeing inflated numbers that don't accurately reflect the email's contribution to that purchase. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, just so you know that I'm not telling you to make the attribution settings always shorter. If you have a brand that has a really long consideration window, so let's say you're selling $10,000 furniture, for example, that might be something that someone's thinking about for 30 days. And those emails that have a lot of education that are nurturing someone and pushing them towards that purchase may actually be directly contributing, even if someone saw it 30 days ago. So it's just something to consider and think about. And I would just say, if you have a more impulse buy type of purchase, then make it shorter. And if you have products that have a longer consideration window, you can have it longer. I wouldn't go too far outside of 5-day open, 5-day click though. That is a good conservative window to understand. So in our attribution settings over here, we can actually change this to whatever we want. So for the sake of this, I can change this to 3 days and 3 days. So if someone opens or clicks an email within 3 days, that purchase is going to get attributed to that email. And then what's important here is in our tracking and reporting data, we want to make sure that we're excluding all of these from our reporting. So the first one here is excluding transactional message from attribution data. So if someone just receives their order confirmation email there, if there's no marketing that's actually going into that email, then it's really not doing anything to actually drive them to convert again. So we don't want to look at our Klaviyo reporting data and see $100,000 in revenue where a ton of that is coming from that transactional email, which would just skew the results and how we're looking at success of our email marketing. So I can check this box to exclude it. We want to exclude bot interactions for anyone clicking an email. So in 2025, there's a lot of bots that actually click into emails and click on links. And of course, if that's happening and someone places an order without actually clicking on the link, then we wouldn't want to count that. So I'll go ahead and exclude that. We're going to exclude bot interactions from clicking SMS, even though we're not talking about SMS right now. And then we want to also exclude Apple Mail privacy protection opens from attribution data. I could talk about Apple Mail privacy exclusions for an hour, but at a high level, ever since iOS 15, Apple now opens every single email that comes into Apple Mail. So if you have an iPhone and you have Apple Mail on your phone, basically every time you receive an email, Apple goes in and opens that email to check if there's any spam or phishing attacks or anything malicious going on there so that they can actually protect you. But what it does is it sends an open to Klaviyo, and that's not a real open. So let's say someone purchases and the only attribution credit it can get is an Apple Mail privacy open, then we don't want credit for that purchase going towards that email. So for that reason, we're going to check this, and then you can simply just click save up here and your attribution will be saved. All right, so we can check this off. Next, we're gonna go to anonymous visitor tracking and our retroactive backfill. So what we're gonna do is go into data, and in data, you're gonna see this setting, which is toggled off by default and a lot of brands don't know about, that allows you to track anonymous visitor tracking. So typically what will happen if this box is not checked is if someone comes to your website and looks at a few products and adds something to cart, Klaviyo is not tracking that until they're actually an email subscriber. So if you only get that person's email when they get to checkout, or if it's a pop-up form that comes up after 30 seconds, we're not gonna see that. Whereas if we check this box, then essentially all of the actions that they take, the products they view, the products they add to cart, are going to be visible after they actually sign up. So this is super useful, and it can lead to a lot more browse abandonment, abandoned cart emails that are sent. So we can check this off. Now let's go to UTM tracking setup. So UTM tracking is really important if you're tracking analytics in something like Google Analytics or Triple Whale, something outside of Klaviyo, so that you can understand where people are coming from. And even in Shopify, on your analytics dashboard, you're going to be able to see those purchases that are coming directly from Klaviyo. As long as you have UTM parameters in all of your links that are associating someone coming to your site from that link with where they're coming from, which in this case is going to be Klaviyo. So over here, you can go to UTM tracking. You can see by default, it's already going to track the source as Klaviyo and the medium, which is going to be the message type. So basically it was an email or SMS. And then if you want, you could also add in your campaigns, your ID, and a term if you want it, or you could even add custom UTM parameters. For now, we can go ahead and just check all of these. It's better to have more than less. And what you want to do here, which is important, is you want to just click automatically add UTM parameters to links. So now every time you send an email, these UTM parameters are going to be added. You don't need to think about it. The next thing we're going to do is go into the Klaviyo account branding setup brand library. So it's really important to make sure that your emails are on brand, your unsubscribe pages, everything that's going on that customers are going to interact with. Basically, this is where you're going to be able to see all of the images that you ever upload into your account. You're going to be able to go to this brand section, which we're going to look at right now. You can look at your fonts to set them, and then you can even now add like a brand voice. So Klaviyo is starting to use some AI copywriting inside of the platform, and you can actually set your brand voice here too, which is pretty cool. So let's navigate over to brand, and basically what you're going to do here is you're going to update your logo. So your logo is usually going to appear in the header of different emails. It's going to appear in the footer occasionally. So just having your logo uploaded is really helpful. Then you're going to go ahead and set your brand colors up. So you have your accent, body text, buttons, links, and you're just going to go ahead and put in your specific brand colors. And then what you're going to do is you're going to put in your primary font. And what you're going to see here is just by default, Klaviyo does not support custom fonts. It supports web safe fonts. So you're going to have to choose the one that is closest represented to your font, so that in the case that an email gets sent that isn't using your custom font, which we're going to get into, then it will send with one of these fonts. Then you can go over to your header links. So header links, honestly, these aren't really useful for most brands to have, especially in the way that you're going to want to design emails, which I'm going to show you, but you can add these in if you want to. And then you can go to social icons, which is basically just going to allow you to really easily access the different socials that you have. So as an example, in the footers of your emails, you're probably going to want to have your social icons in most cases. So basically by setting it up here, you'll never have to go manually input in those templates. So we can click save changes, and then we can go over to fonts over here. And basically, this is where you're going to want to add in your custom fonts. So what's important to understand is you can add in any custom font that that you want, that you use on your website as an example. But what's important to understand is that these custom fonts are not going to render in every inbox provider. So some inbox providers like Google, for an example, are only going to be able to show like Google fonts or web safe fonts. So if you're using a font that's from Adobe or a completely custom font, it's not going to be able to render in someone's inbox in Google, which is why you're going to have to set a fallback font. So what you're going to do here is if you use a Google font, you can go ahead and select the font that you use. If you use Adobe, same thing. And if you use a completely custom font that's not Google or Adobe, you can click on hosted web font and you'll get a lot of specific instructions on how to host your font within Klaviyo. It's actually pretty simple to follow, but basically whenever you're choosing your font, so let's say our brand's font is Geist over here, we're gonna have to set a fallback just to make sure that if the inbox provider can't render Geist, then it's gonna render whatever's closest to that, which in this example, let's just say might be Tahoma. And then we can click add font. And now we're gonna have it here to use whenever we are creating emails. And just like that, we are done with our basic Klaviyo setup foundation. Let's talk about what we need to do to ensure technical deliverability compliance. So deliverability is the least sexy part about email marketing, but it's also the most important part. At the end of the day, if your emails are landing in spam and they're not landing in people's inboxes, then it's gonna be really hard for people to open them. If they're not opening, they're not gonna click. If they're not clicking, they're not gonna buy. So what we really need to make sure of is that we are doing the basics properly to ensure that our deliverability is good. And for some additional context, because it's important to understand how these things work, every brand has a sender reputation, and your sender reputation is like a credit score. So like your credit score, if you screw up and it drops, it's gonna be really hard to build back up, which is why it's always important to operate the right way in email marketing and not send to the wrong lists and not do things that are gonna hurt your sender reputation. Basically, a good reputation gets you good inbox placements. You're gonna land in people's primary inboxes. You're not gonna land in spam or maybe the promotions tab. And it's based on history. So the things that we're going to talk more about are bounce rates. So basically, if you are sending an email and it bounces, that can happen because you send to an invalid address. So as an example, if someone is signing up through one of your pop-up forms and they put in a fake email address, that might trigger your welcome series or your abandoned cart flow. And that is gonna send an email to an address that doesn't exist. And that's gonna result in a bounce, which is gonna hurt your sender reputation. Spam complaints, if you're sending emails that people are marking as spam, that's very bad for your sender reputation. Then engagement, so if people are opening or clicking or replying to your emails, those are great signs. Those are all signals that you are someone that people wanna hear from, so great signals for the inbox providers. But on the other hand, if you have really low open rates because you're not sending to the right people, really low click rates because your content isn't engaging, then the inbox providers are gonna see that as a negative and it will decrease your sender reputation. So sending at a consistent cadence is super important. Let's say it's 2 campaigns a week and flows going out every day. You need to have that consistent cadence. And then your domain needs to be authenticated. So basically SPF, DKIM, and DMARC records are all going to be the basic foundational records that just let the inbox providers know that you are who you say you are. So essentially, if someone's sending emails pretending to be your brand and trying to like run a scam on your customers and subscribers, these records help protect you and let the inbox providers know that that person is not you. So let's just walk through the basics of what we need to set up and how to set it up so that you're landing in the inbox. And honestly, you would be surprised at how many brands who've been using Klaviyo for years do not have this stuff set up and are suffering because of it. So the first thing you're gonna need to do is set up a dedicated sending domain. So in your settings, we're gonna click on your account name, we're gonna click on settings over here, and we're gonna navigate over to domains. Now in your account, if you don't have a branded email sending domain set up, this is what you're gonna see, and you have to set this up. Even if you have set this up, I'm going to show you what you need to do specifically to avoid some mistakes that a lot of brands make when setting this up initially. I'm gonna click on add domain over here, and basically we have the root domain, which is just gonna be your brand's website. So I'm just gonna put in the dispatch.agency. I'm gonna click on next over here, and basically then you're just gonna click your sending domain. So this is gonna be like a subdomain under your regular one. So as an example, what we're gonna have is send.thedispatch.agency. So this is actually brand new. I've never seen this before, but it looks like Klaviyo now has an integration with this company Entry that helps you do this. For the sake of this example, because this might cost money, I'm not really sure, let's go ahead and set it up manually so that you can see how this really works. So I'm gonna click set up manually, and then you're gonna click on your domain provider here. So basically wherever you bought your domain from and wherever it's hosted, that's where you're gonna click. So I'm gonna click other over here. I'm gonna click next. And now here you're gonna see a bunch of new DNS records, which we're gonna have to add in wherever we have our website website hosted. So let's say your website is hosted on GoDaddy. You're going to take these records and go ahead and copy them over with the name and the value associated with each over to GoDaddy's DNS settings. Because this is different based on who your provider is for your domain, I'm not going to go through the exact process, but if you need, you can look up a video easily on how to update your DNS records. So once these are all added, I'm going to go ahead and just click verify. It's going to take up to 48 hours to verify these records. So you only want to click verify after you've put these DNS records into your domain. So I'm going to click finish over here. And now we have our branded sending domain being set up and verified. So we set up our dedicated sending domain. And next up, we need to also add DNS records for our SPF, TKIM, and DMARC records. I'm going to go ahead and actually add in a link right here that explains exactly how to do this. You're going to find on Google. You're going to see instructions on how to set up your DKIM, SPF, and DMARC records right over here. One thing I want to call out, because it is super, super, super important, is that when you're setting up your DMARC records, you're going to see that you're going to have a line that looks pretty much something like this. This is what a DMARC record looks like. And what is really important is that you want to make sure that this always says P equals none and not reject or quarantine. Basically what this means is if you say reject or quarantine, what's going to happen here is that if the inbox providers think that an email you're sending is spam, which can happen for a lot of reasons, they're going to send it to spam. Whereas if it is none, they're going to continue sending it to people's inboxes. And it's going to have a huge difference on whether your emails are actually delivered or not. So after you set up these DNS records, which are extremely important, the next thing I just want to cover is Gmail and Yahoo compliance guidelines. And essentially Gmail and Yahoo came out and became a lot stricter on who they're allowing into people's inboxes and who they're sending to spam. So the main things you really need to understand and set up properly is your dedicated sending domain and your DNS records that we just talked about. And the other thing that you have to understand is that it's really important to now keep your spam complaint rates below 0.3%. And I'm going to show you exactly where to see those spam complaint rates in the account. And ideally, you actually want to keep them below 0.1%. And then for bounce rates, really important that you're keeping them under 1%. I'm going to show you how to monitor those as well. The last part of settings I want to talk about here is your consent page customization. So this is something that most brands never touch in the back end, but it has an impact on how your brand is perceived. So basically there are a few pages that your subscribers will see either when they're signing up or when they're unsubscribing. And we want to make sure that those are branded as best as possible. So if you navigate over to other in settings, you're going to see that you have your preference page, your subscribe page, email confirmation, and your unsubscribe page over here. And basically, if you click on edit page for any of these, you're going to see that you can actually edit this. So in your footer, you're going to want to allow your subscribers to update their preferences or unsubscribe whenever they want to. You legally have to do that even if you don't want to. So on the preference page, you can basically see Klaviyo uses a really easy drag and drop editor all across their platform. And basically you can add text, you can add images, you can change the color of the background, you can change the color of the buttons, really do anything that you want over here to just make this on brand. And there's a success page, so you can edit this as well. Now the subscribe page isn't really that important, and I'll just show you why over here. Basically, Klaviyo has a double opt-in process or a single opt-in, which we can choose, and I'm gonna show you exactly where we're gonna choose that. And basically, you're always gonna wanna choose single opt-in instead of double opt-in, because what happens if you have double opt-in turned on is people are gonna receive a opt-in double confirmation email, which is gonna look exactly like this. And essentially, before they can receive any emails from you, they're gonna have to click, yes, I want to subscribe here. Unfortunately, most people don't actually click on this button, which means you're gonna lose out on a lot of the subscribers you have. So I wouldn't waste time editing this page because you're really not gonna need it. Email confirmation page, you don't need either. And then email unsubscribe page, if we click edit page, here's where you can add some nice text on your unsubscribe page to maybe just thank people for being part of the brand. Anything else that you might wanna add here outside of just branding updates, you can do here as well. All right, so we've got our settings optimized in our Klaviyo account right now, and now it's time for the fun stuff. Let's start actually using Klaviyo to make some money. Now, before we just dive into campaigns and flows and abandoned carts and pop-up forms, I want to talk about for 1 minute why it's so important to deeply understand your customer journey and really keep your customer journey in mind whenever you're building out all of the things that we're about to go into building out. Because what I see all the time is brands just set up all of these touch points across their customer lifecycle in a silo where they're sending a campaign that isn't congruent with something that is being said in their flows, or they're saying something in their flows that doesn't really take into account what a customer already knows or doesn't know about the brand. And basically what understanding your customer journey does is it allows you to speak to someone exactly where they are in their life cycle. And the impact on revenue that this has is significant because, of course, if you're sending a first-time customer discount to someone who has already placed 5 orders, then they're not going to be too happy about receiving this discount that they can't even use. So essentially, your customer journey and the way that Klaviyo plays into it is going to look something like this. So someone is going to visit your website for the first time from either an ad on Meta or organic content that you're posting on TikTok or Instagram, any other platform. They're getting to your website for the first time. They're going to look around for a few seconds, and then they're going to see your pop-up form, which is going to prompt them to join your email list. So the first checkpoint here when it comes to keeping our customer journey in mind is, okay, we're going to be showing them a pop-up form. What do they know about our brand at this point based on the ad that they've been shown or based on the content that they've seen? For us to have an offer or messaging in that pop-up form that actually just speaks to what they know and what they might care about. So after someone joins your list from your form, they're going to start receiving emails from your automated flows. That first email is probably going to be from your welcome series, your nurture series. It could be from your abandoned cart flow if they've added something to cart, but those are typically the first emails that they're going to get. Then you're going to be sending email campaigns at least once per week. So the next communications that they're going to start getting are going to be from your campaigns. And at this point, this is when we can be confident that whether it's because of our automated flows or whether it's because of our campaigns, someone's going to place their first order with the brand. And at this point, we just want to understand, okay, they placed their first order. What are we going to be communicating to them in order to make sure that they have the best experience with our product so that they want to come back and buy again? And we're going to use all of those touch points after their first order to then try and drive their next orders. So essentially, we just want to ensure that our messages, our offers, and our content is always going to be aligned with where subscribers are in their journey to maximize conversion rates at each touch point. So let's go back into Klaviyo, and I want to just give you a baseline understanding of how Klaviyo works and how you're going to be able to understand everything that's happening here. The first thing I want to look at here is metrics. So if you click in the metrics tab, metrics in Klaviyo are essentially any behavior or any action that is being taken either by you as the brand or by your subscribers and your customers. There's a few types of metrics that you're gonna have. And these metrics are either going to be coming from Klaviyo, they're going to be coming from Shopify, or they're going to be coming from an API. So basically, if you have API that's feeding data into Klaviyo, it would be coming from here. And then if you have any other integration set up, that is basically where they're going to be coming from. So as an example, when it comes to Klaviyo, we're going to be able to identify all the behaviors that have happened around someone receiving emails or SMSs. So if we just look at the email ones over here, we're going to be able to see when someone received an email, when someone opened an email, when they clicked an email, and then if they clicked an email to unsubscribe, if the email was marked as spam, if the email couldn't even reach their inbox because it was a dropped email. Like, we can see all of this, and these metrics are then going to be placed on people's profiles, which we'll look at in a minute. And these metrics basically just get fired all day long as people are interacting with all of the emails that you're sending. Next, when it comes to Shopify, you're going to be able to understand when someone ordered a product, when they placed a full order, when that order has been fulfilled, when an order has been refunded, when a checkout has been started by someone, or when someone has canceled their order. So basically, at a high level, these metrics are going to be used for two things. They're going to be used for triggering flows, and they're going to be used for setting filters and parameters about who we want to receive emails and who we don't want to receive emails. So we're going to get into building flows soon. But as an example, when we look at our metric of checkout started, this is what's going to allow us to understand that someone has started a checkout. And then we're going to be able to say that when someone starts a checkout and we use this checkout started flow as the trigger, then we know that we want them to receive an email 2 hours later. Basically, at a high level, our metrics are going to be used to trigger our automations. So if we see that someone checkout started, that is going to trigger our abandoned checkout flow. And then these metrics are also going to be used for us to personalize any communications that we want to by just grouping people based on the behaviors that they've taken. So basically, metrics are the foundation of Klaviyo's automation engine and all of the personalization capabilities that we have. All right, so next up, let's talk about understanding profiles in Klaviyo. So first up, profiles can come from multiple sources. So a profile can actually be created in Klaviyo by someone signing up from a pop-up form, let's say, someone placing an order, and the shop Shopify integration, pulling in and creating that profile. It can come from you manually uploading a list of emails, or it can come from other integration. So let's say someone puts in a customer service request with like an integrated app like Gorgeous that you're using. Gorgeous can actually go in and create that profile in Klaviyo. Or if you have a loyalty program and someone signs up there and it's Klaviyo's first time seeing that email address, that would also create a profile. So basically each user has this one profile and all of the event history, so all of the metrics that they've ever triggered and all of the properties that are associated with them as a profile, which we'll take a look at in a second, and the properties associated with the metrics. So let's say they placed an order, that would be a metric on their profile, and then you would be able to see the properties inside of that metric to be able to see what they purchased, how much the cost was, all of that data. Profiles basically store and show all behavioral data. So anytime someone opens an email, clicks an email, places an order, that's where you're gonna see this. And basically all of the data that lives on a profile is what's going to allow you to power different filters in your segments, in your splits and flows, which we're gonna talk about, and different conditional logic that you're gonna use inside of Klaviyo that's gonna help you personalize your messaging to each specific person. And lastly here, I mentioned that profiles can be created by integrations, but they can also be enriched by integrations. So let's say someone leaves a review through one of your integrated Shopify apps, they upgrade their loyalty status. All of this data is going to be on this person's profile. And basically what this means is that this profile is going to give you the most data that you're going to have on a specific customer or a specific email subscriber compared to Shopify or a third-party app where all the data is going to live in a silo. So basically this is one integrated space where everything you need to know about a customer is going to live. So the way you're actually going to be able to view profiles in Klaviyo is in this audience section. You're going to see the profiles tab. And essentially here, you're going to be able to see all of the different profiles that exist in your Klaviyo account. And if you click into one, so if we click into any of them here, here's where you're going to be able to see all of the different information showing you how this specific person has interacted with your brand. So first off, we can see their email and SMS subscription status. So we can see that this person subscribed to email. We can see how they subscribed, when they subscribed, and the specific form that they subscribed with. If you're using SMS marketing, you'll be able to see that here as well. If you've issued them any coupons, you'll be able to see those coupons here. And then you have custom properties. So custom properties is basically showing you all of the data that you have on each subscriber that is specific to how your brand is collecting data. So as an example, you can see the source, so exactly how they signed up. In this specific account, we're tracking if someone's a prospect who's never bought before or a repeat purchaser. So here we can see if they're a prospect, and then we can see if there's any Shopify tags that are being pulled in through the Shopify integration associated with their email in Shopify. And we can even see how many loyalty points they have right here. And what's important to understand here and why this is so cool is because we're now going to be able to use all of these custom properties to determine who we want to send emails to. So if we just want to send emails to prospects, this is what's going to allow us to understand who our prospects are. If you scroll down here, you're also going to be able to see some other information about them, what their language is, what their location is based on their IP address or when they shopped with you and the address they used at checkout. You're going to be able to see how they found you most recently, the last time they came to the website, how did they get there, all the activity. So when was their profile created? When was it last updated? When were they first active? When were they last active, etc. And on the right side here is where we're going to be able to see all of our metrics that this person has triggered. So Klaviyo basically uses the word events and metrics interchangeably here, but every time a metric is triggered, that is an event. So here we can see that this person was active on site, they submitted a form, they were officially subscribed to our email marketing, and then they started receiving emails. We can see each time that they opened an email, we see that they started viewing more products. So we can really track their entire customer journey through this flow over here. Now, there's a few other tabs in the profile section, which a lot of people don't really know about. The next is metrics and insights. So here's basically where we're going to be able to see of the metrics that we want to track, and we can actually edit these metrics over here if we want to. We can easily identify at a glance how many orders they've placed, how much revenue they've driven, orders that have been fulfilled. And if we did want to have other metrics in here that were associated with like our loyalty program or anything else, we could edit these and have these here at a glance too. Klaviyo recently introduced predictive analytics. So there's three main predictive analytics that Klaviyo will likely show you in your Klaviyo account. We're only seeing two over here, but essentially the three are customer lifetime value, predicted date of next order, which is going to show you if someone has placed an order before, or channel affinity. So if you're sending emails and SMSs to people, Klaviyo will now actually be able to tell you which of those channels they're more likely to engage with, so that you know when you have a sale, you don't necessarily have to send them an email and an SMS. You could just send them what we know that they prefer. You can see recently viewed products for that person. And basically like this data is cool, I guess, to see at a glance, but really what's important to understand, and you're going to be able to start making these connections sections as we move through the course, is you can use all of this data to personalize your messaging for this specific profile. So as an example, if we say that we want to offer a discount code to anyone whose customer lifetime value is predicted to be above $500, we'll be able to set that specifically. If we want to send an email to anyone who has recently been on the website, we can dynamically show them the products that they've recently viewed instead of showing them random products. So basically, anytime you see some data in Klaviyo, you should know that there is a way to use that data to personalize your messaging. So we're going to talk about lists and segments and how to create them in a second, but at a glance in someone's profile, you're going to be able to see which lists and segments they're a part of. Now, here's a major pro tip that a lot of people don't know about, but is going to be very useful for you. In our emails, I'm going to show you how to let someone unsubscribe, which is something that you have to do. But a lot of the times people try and unsubscribe and then they'll message you and say that they're still receiving emails. What you're going to have to do is you're going to click on this email section over here. You're going to click these 3 dots and then you're going to click suppress so that this person no longer receives emails from you. All right, so now that we looked at profiles and you understand how profiles work inside of Klaviyo, I'm now going to show you where these profiles live inside of Klaviyo and how we can organize them in order to make sure your messaging is personalized. All right, so essentially there's only 2 ways to kind of house profiles within Klaviyo. You have lists and then you have segments. Lists are static, which means they never change. If you put someone in a list, they're just going to stay there. And they're primarily used for opt-ins and for triggering welcome flows. The key takeaway here is that you should have 1 primary email list and 1 primary SMS list for all organic opt-ins that either come from your pop-up forms or your checkout. And then you should be creating new lists whenever you're importing new subscribers that are coming from a different source. So the reason why this is really important is because you want to keep track of how people are coming into your Klaviyo database so that you can track how your list is actually growing from your main opt-in sources. And then the second reason is we're going to talk about flows in a few minutes, but when someone does sign up to a list, they're going to trigger a welcome flow, a nurture series. And essentially, we want to control what type of messaging someone is getting in that welcome series based on where they're coming from. So most of your subscribers, as you're growing your brand, are going to come from these organic opt-in sources, either pop-up forms or checkout, but there are going to be other opportunities. So let's say you're running a giveaway on Instagram to convert your Instagram followers into email subscribers. Essentially, what you don't want to happen is you don't want those Instagram followers to get a first email that's basically saying, get 10% off your first order if they're signing up for a giveaway. Like, you want that first email to say, welcome to our brand, get excited for the giveaway. So next up, we have our segments here, and segments are dynamic, meaning that they are always going to be changing. So every minute of the day, your segments can be changing, and they're going to change based on the definition of the segment. So you're gonna have to define what you want your segment to be based on certain criteria about a given profile's behavior, whether they've purchased or not, or whether they've engaged in email or SMS or any other data that might live on their profile. So segments are updated in real time, and these are what should be used when you're sending campaigns. So I have this highlighted below, and I'm gonna go to it right now. You never want to send a campaign to your brand's entire list. So it's pretty rare that you would want to send a campaign to a list at all, but you absolutely never, ever, ever want to send a campaign to your brand's entire list. But essentially what you should know at this point is you want to be using segments to send your campaigns. Using segments is going to help you keep your deliverability healthy, and it's going to help you personalize your messaging at scale. So there are a ton of different segments that could be relevant for every brand. Every brand is unique, and how you talk to your subscribers and how you segment them and split them up and personalize your messaging to them can be different for each brand. What I want to focus on here are the 2 main segments that are going to be really useful for every single brand, and specifically what about these segments is relatable to every brand. So essentially, the 2 key segments that you should have for your campaign sending are going to be engaged prospects and engaged customers. So we already talked about deliverability and your sender reputation, and the number one thing you have to do to keep your sender reputation high is you need to be sending emails to people who want to receive emails from you. So what that means is if someone signed up to your list 2 years ago, and we now know based on our metrics and our profile data that this person has not opened an email or clicked an email or even maybe visited the website in the last 2 years, why would we want to continue sending that person emails if we know with basically 100% certainty that they're not interested in the brand anymore and they don't want to hear from us? Each time that we send an email to someone who is not going to open it, it's going to hurt our deliverability. And the most important criteria we want to make sure we have in our segments is engagement criteria. We want to make sure that we're only sending campaigns to people who have showed us that they're interested and have been opening our emails. Honestly, at Dispatch, we're one of the only agencies that I've seen do this, but we find it extremely important and helpful to break out your segments between prospects and existing customers, because after you send the campaign, you're going to be able to see the data on each of the segments that you have sent to. So what that means is if you were just sending to a general engaged segment, so let's say we're just sending to anyone who's opened an email in the last 90 days. At the end of that campaign, we're gonna have the data on how many opens there were, how many clicks there were, how many purchases there were. But what we're not gonna be able to see at a high level is who purchased. So was it someone who purchased for the first time, or did this campaign actually convert a returning customer? So for each unique brand, outside of just like a prospect versus a returning customer, there can absolutely be different slices of your database that you would want to see this data for. So let's say you are an apparel brand. So for an apparel brand, for an example, they might want to break this out between people who have purchased for men before and people who have purchased for women, so that they can understand when they're sending a campaign for women's clothing, are there a lot of men buying or is it just women buying? But one thing that I know to be true after doing this for several years is every single brand has prospects who are going to be converted for the first time, and they have returning customers who are going to purchase again and again and again. And these two groups have fundamentally different reasons for wanting to purchase. So if we can understand that a prospect bought from a specific campaign that showed a lot of reviews, let's say, then we know we should show more reviews in our campaigns to prospects, and we should show more reviews in our welcome series, as an example. One more thing I'm going to note here is if you do want to create new segments and just send campaigns to men or just send campaigns to women, what's really important is that you always keep in engagement criteria. So let's look at what engagement criteria looks like in this example, and then we'll go over to Klaviyo and I'll show you how to actually build this segment. So our engagement criteria is basically anything that's just going to tell us if this person has engaged with our emails. Because even if someone's purchased 10 times in the last few months, but they haven't opened or clicked an email, like continuing to send to them is still going to hurt our deliverability if they're not opening the emails. All right, so the first criteria we're gonna just want here is we're gonna say that someone has opened an email in the last 180 days, the last 6 months, and we're gonna say where Apple Privacy Open is false. Basically, if someone has Apple Mail installed on their phone, Apple after iOS 15 started going in and opening every single email that comes into their inbox just to make sure there's no spam or phishing attacks or anything. And basically, if we don't have this filter in here, we're just not gonna know if someone's actually opening our emails or if it's an Apple Privacy Open. So we're saying Apple Privacy Open is false, and then we're gonna say, or someone has clicked an email in the last 180 days, where bot click is false. So similar to Apple Privacy Opens, there are bots that can actually go in and open emails and click on them, and Klaviyo is able to identify if a click was from a bot. So obviously we don't want to consider someone engaged if there was just a bot in their email that was clicking on something. So we want to filter that out. Then we're going to say, or someone has subscribed to a list in the last 14 days. The reason why this specific criteria and definition is important is because if someone has just subscribed to your list in the last 2 weeks, it's possible that they've only received 1 or 2 emails, and we want to give them a chance to receive more and show whether they're engaged or not before we basically decide that they're unengaged. Then we also say, or if someone is active on site at least once in the last 14 days. So essentially, this is a really good use of using email for retargeting. So the same way that if someone visits your website from a Facebook ad, you're going to try and retarget them for a week or two to try and convert them with more ads. Adding these people into our engaged segment when we're sending campaigns allows us to get into their inbox, even if they haven't been engaged recently. We know that they're now again showing intent, they're coming back to the website, they're interested, so we would want to consider them engaged. But similar to new people who subscribe to our list in the last 2 weeks, if someone is active on our website and then they don't open our emails, we don't want to have them there for 6 months. We just want to try and give them a chance to engage again in the next 2 weeks. And then if they don't, they're out of there. Then we're going to say, and if someone can or cannot receive email marketing. So this is basically just going to define to Klaviyo that this person hasn't already unsubscribed and they're not suppressed. And this last criteria is where we're going to define them as a prospect. So someone who's never purchased before, we're going to say what someone has done, placed order 0 times overall time. And then to create the next segment, which is going to be one-time purchase customers, all you're going to have to do is clone that last segment and just simply change this last part of the definition to place order at least once over all time. One more thing to note is you're going to want to create 3 sub-segments for each of these groups, your prospects and your existing customers. And you're going to want to create this for your 90-day engaged subscribers, your 180-day engaged subscribers, or your 365-day engaged subscribers. The reason why is basically because different types of content and offers that you have are going to just be more attractive to people who are not usually engaged. At Dispatch, what we typically do is we typically send our evergreen content that doesn't have like huge offers or huge new product announcements to our 90-day engaged subscribers. So anyone who has opened or clicked an email or done any of this engagement criteria in the last 3 months is a good candidate to receive our evergreen emails because we know that they've recently shown interest in engaging with the brand. But if we imagine that someone is not in that 90-day engaged segment and they haven't been regularly opening emails, what we do know is that they might be interested in receiving a big Black Friday offer. I'm sure everyone watching this has certain brands that they can think of for themselves that like once a year they want to shop from, or they just like want to know what those massive deals are when they come out, or those huge new product releases. They don't really care to keep up with them all the time, but when they do have a big announcement, they want to hear from them. When Black Friday comes around, you would want to send to your 365-day engage segment to just see who we can re-engage with this big offer announcement that isn't typically engaged. All right, I said before, I'll say it again, you absolutely never want to send a campaign to your brand's entire list. You always want to make sure that there's some level of engagement criteria in place. The other thing, this is a major pro tip, and I see so many brands making this mistake and it's costing them tens of thousands of dollars in revenue every single month, is that you don't want to send to segments that are too small. And essentially what that looks like is if we look at this scenario right here, a lot of brands will only send campaigns to their prospects. So let's say they're sending 2 campaigns a week. They might just send one of those campaigns to their prospects with more personalized messaging, let's say, and then they might send the second campaign to just their one-time purchasers. The reason why this is not a good idea is because it cuts your distribution and it cuts your number of recipients in half. At the end of the day, if you're sending an email on a Tuesday and a Friday to both of these groups separately, you don't know when a person in either of those groups is going to be interested in buying. So if you only send that one email to one of these groups on the Tuesday and then skip them on the Friday, but they were more likely to purchase on the Friday, you're literally just reducing the amount of shots you have on goal to convert them. So unless your brand has millions of subscribers and all of the resources that are needed to send a high volume of campaigns to smaller segments, the average brand that's doing less than $20 million a year is much better served sending more evergreen general content to both of these groups and basically all of your engaged subscribers, no matter how you want to slice them, and then using things like dynamic content to personalize those emails, which we'll talk about later in the course. Now, the 2 action items that you need to take away from this are you need to set up your primary email list, and then you need to set up your engaged segments that we just talked about here. So if you head over to Klaviyo and we're in the profile section, you're just going to click on lists and segments right over here. Lists and segments are both housed in the same tab. If you ever want to filter between them, you can filter between lists and segments over here. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to start with our list. So you're going to have the ability to either create a list or create a segment right here. We're going to start with creating our main email list. And what we're going to do is we're going to call this master email list. So you can call this whatever you want, but ultimately this is going to be used for everyone that's coming in from our pop-up forums or from checkout. We have our master email list created, and you're going to see exactly how this gets used as we move through the course. And then the next thing is creating our engaged segment. So create new, create segment. And here is I'm going to copy everything that we have over from our course over here. And if you want to copy this yourself, you can grab the link to this document in the description. In our segment builder, what you should understand is your segment builder is what's going to allow you to create a segment of your entire database based on whatever criteria and conditions you want. The conditions that you have access to is whether someone can or cannot receive email marketing. So if someone can receive email marketing, it means that they have not unsubscribed, they haven't been suppressed. What someone has done or has not done. So here's where you're going to see person has, and then all of the metrics that we looked at previously. So all of these metrics analytics, all of the behaviors that can be attributed to someone's profile are going to be right here. So as an example, if we want to see that someone's been active on site, we can go ahead and say they've been active on site at least once or 0 times or equals to a certain amount of times. And then we could set the exact date range that we want, or we can even say just overall time. So you can determine someone's proximity to a location. So if you have retail locations in place, this would be something really valuable for you. You could say if someone's in the EU or not. Then you can access all the properties that we have about someone. So when we were on someone's profile and we were looking at all of the custom properties that exist, here's where you can see all of those properties. So let's say we just want to send to someone who has a specific Shopify tag, we'd be able to put in what that tag is. So we could say contains the text, and then you would enter the tag that's on their account. If we want to send to people who have viewed specific items, we could do that as well. So this is where you can start connecting the dots on how we can use all of this data to build our segments that we could then use to send campaigns or trigger flows to really personalize our messaging. All right, so back to our example here, we're gonna say what someone has done, and we're gonna say opened email, and then we're gonna say at least once in the last 180 days. And then we're gonna put our filter in here for the Apple Mail privacy filters. And what we're going to do is we're gonna click Apple privacy open is false. Then what I'm going to do, because it's super simple, is I'm going to clone this. So I'm just gonna duplicate it, and we're gonna say or what someone has done. And I'm gonna change this to clicked email at least once in the last 180 days, where we're gonna say bot click is false. So then I'm gonna say, or someone has subscribed to list at least once in the last 14 days. Then we can clone this and we can say, or person has been active on site at least once in the last 14 days. And here's where you have to be careful when you're building segments. You have to make sure you're using or and properly. And why this really matters is because here, the next definition that we have to have is we need to say if someone can receive email marketing. Now, the problem is if I say or someone can receive email marketing, what that means is it basically doesn't matter if all of this is true or false, because if this is true, then everyone in the segment is going to be there because of this. Versus if I say and over here, now it's looking to see if any of these are true and this is true, then they'll be in the segment. And ultimately, that's what we want here. And finally, we want to know that someone is a prospect. So again, what we're gonna have to say is if they meet any of these engagement criteria and they can receive email marketing and they've never placed an order before, then include them in the segment. So we're just gonna say placed order 0 times overall time. And there we have it. And Klaviyo is gonna give you a preview of exactly how many profiles are gonna be in that segment right here. So you can go ahead and click create segment. And then what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna clone again and make 3 more segments for 90, 180, 365 days, where all we're gonna change is we're gonna say placed order at least once overall time. And then this is now going to become our existing customers engaged 180-day segment. Simple as that. And you can click clone segment. And that is basically the foundational understanding you need of how segments work and how to create these first 6 core segments that you need in your account. So just like that, we can go ahead and check off our 2 tasks here. And now we get to the fun part. So we talked about profiles, we talked about lists, but how do you actually go about getting people onto your list? One of the most important things, with no exaggeration, you can do to help grow your e-com brand profitably is growing your list as fast as possible. Because if you are driving traffic to your site with paid ads, you need to be capturing as much of that traffic as possible and turning them into email and SMS subscribers. So right now, I'm gonna show you how to build a really high converting form extremely quickly with Klaviyo's form builder. So at Dispatch, my agency, these are our performance benchmarks for our clients' pop-up forms. And if you're watching this video and you're implementing everything I'm telling you, these should be your benchmarks as well. Because in Klaviyo, they basically put an excellent badge if you have a conversion rate on your pop-up form above 3%. And the truth is that just is not excellent. Like if you know anything about creating a good form, if you're A/B testing it and optimizing it, you should be able to convert over 9% of your site traffic with your pop-up forms. So let's get into what a top performing pop-up form structure looks like so that you don't waste any time building a form that does not have this top performing structure. We've A/B tested hundreds and hundreds of pop-up forms over the last few years for our clients. So everything that I'm about to tell you is based on our data. It's not based on my opinion. And I can tell you with great certainty that this will be the top performing structure that you can use for your brand. The first step that we're going to want to have in our form is a micro yes step. So what most brands do is they have a pop-up form in place, and the first step of their form looks like this. It says something like you've got 20% off or take 10% off your first order, and then it has the email input field and a button that says continue or sign up. What a micro yes or a micro commitment step is it essentially presents someone with the offer that's available to them, and it simply asks them, do you want this offer? Yes or no. The reason why this converts so much better is because it's based on a simple psychological principle called the micro commitment principle. And what it means is that when you can get someone to make a commitment to wanting something before you then go and ask them for what you want in return, they're much more likely to give you what you want after they've already committed. So you can see how this plays out in this example here. Instead of saying you've got 20% off, give us your email, we're just saying you've got 20% off plus join our VIP list, get exclusive offers and product releases, claim 20% off, or I'm not interested. Who wouldn't just click this button that says claim 20% off if there's nothing being asked of them in return? So you're gonna see a very large percentage of people clicking this claim 20% off. And then once they get to the step when you're asking for what you want, which is their email, you're going to see a very high percentage of those people giving you their email address. So we covered step 1 and step 2. After you collect your email, we're not talking too much about SMS in this course. I have another in-depth tutorial on setting up Klaviyo for SMS that you can go watch. But what I want to call out here is you absolutely should be collecting SMS subscribers for your brand in the third step of your form. There's really no reason not to. Even if you don't have time to set up your entire SMS marketing funnel right now and your marketing program, that's okay. But you're just leaving money on the table by not starting to collect these subscribers when there's really nothing that needs to go into a big setup on the back end. And then finally, the fourth step in our form is going to be the success page, where we're just letting them know for 20% off, either we're going to say, use this code at checkout, and we're going to give them their code in the form, or what a lot of brands choose to do is tell them that the code is now on their way to their inbox and their phone, so that we can actually get them into the habit of starting to open their email. And we get an immediate boost to our sender reputation by having that first email that we're sending to a new subscriber actually get opened and get clicked versus unopened. And the final thing to note here is once your form is built, you're also just going to want to toggle on the teaser element, which basically means that if someone does click out at any point in the form, this teaser will still be here as they're shopping and as they're navigating, browsing the site, to let them know they can still claim it, which will reopen the form. Now, before we go into Klaviyo and I show you exactly how to build out a pop-up form like this, just a few more general guidelines so that you can have the absolute best performance on your forms. Again, based on hundreds of A/B tests we've run, the form type that we're going to want to select is a pop-up form. So you're going to have the option to use a flyout form or a full page form. Pop-up forms typically perform best, although this can be a good A/B test. When it comes to the behavior settings, in the form settings under behavior, we're going to uncheck click outside form to close. Essentially what that's going to mean is when a pop-up comes up, it's really easy for someone who's just browsing the website to click on a product page or another button on your site. And if that happens at like the exact second that the pop-up form comes up, which can happen pretty often, that form's going to close. They're not going to reopen it, and we're going to lose them as a subscriber. So we just want to make sure that the only way for them to close the form is to click the X button. That's going to be clearly there. And the reason being, like, we want to make sure they have a chance to see the offer that's there for them. When it comes to load timing, immediate loading pop-ups typically perform better than having a time delay. On the design side, pop-ups with no images typically perform better than pop-up forms with images. The psychology behind it is typically just like when you are laser focused on someone's eyes going to the offer versus going to an image, then it will convert better. You're gonna have to make sure that your form is optimized for mobile and desktop. A lot of people, when they're setting up everything on Klaviyo, only think about desktop because that's what they're working on. Truth is, most of the traffic that's going to be receiving your email, seeing your pop-up form, is going to be on mobile. So it's always super important to keep mobile in consideration. And then finally, we're gonna wanna make sure that we are displaying our pop-up forms to all website visitors who aren't subscribed to email. I see so many brands just leaking so many subscribers and revenue by not having their settings optimized. So this is gonna be really important as we walk through this. In Klaviyo, you're gonna click on the sign up forms tab tab over here, and then you're gonna click the button that says create form right here. Now, Klaviyo has a lot of templates. Honestly, their templates have gotten a lot better over the last few years. So you can either start with a template that catches your eye, or you can actually click create blank form. There is a template that has a micro yes step in place. So many of them don't, but I'll show you which one that is so that you can actually start in a easier way. So there's a few of them. I'm just gonna click this one as an example. So you can see it says get $20 off your first order, claim 20. We'll go ahead and put in our name here. I'm gonna call this site-wide pop-up form. And then you're gonna choose your email subscriber list. So this is where we're gonna go ahead and choose our master email list that we created in the last step. And then Klaviyo recommends using a separate list for phone number SMS subscribers. You absolutely should be doing that. So go ahead and just set up another SMS list if you don't have one by default. And then we're just gonna click create form over here. This is Klaviyo's form builder. And basically what you can see is we have our teaser over here, which is right here. We have our micro commitment. So you're gonna be able to see and navigate through all of the pages of the form here. We have our email opt-in, we have our SMS opt-in, and then we have our success page. So all you have to do to get this up and running and started for your brand is you're gonna have to choose your acquisition offer and then just make it really prominent in the header, exactly like this. So this is a great template that looks like our reference. So let's say it's 10% off. We can go ahead and change this to 10% off. We'll go ahead and change $20 off to 10% off in the button over here to match. And then what's really important is to make sure that your pop-up forms have branding and design that is aligned with the rest of your brand guidelines and your funnel. We're gonna talk about email design later in the course in detail, but when it comes to just design across your funnel, it's just really important that everything looks on brand. So what you're gonna do is you're going to go ahead and change all of the fonts to match your brand fonts. You're gonna change the colors to match your brand colors. So when we look at our text editor here, it's pretty intuitive. We can scroll over it and then basically just choose another font. So let's say we want Arial Black, we can choose that. If we want our text color, let's say it's black for this brand, we can go ahead and change that. We can go ahead and change the rest of our fonts to match whatever our brand fonts are. This is gonna be different for everyone watching this, obviously. Typically, forms without images do perform best. This is a really good A/B test to run. And I'm just gonna mention it again, it's super important to A/B test your pop-up form every month. You wanna make sure with all the paid traffic that you're driving, that you're always trying to find the optimal form to convert the highest percentage of site traffic possible. So even if your first form is converting at 10%, I guarantee you that's not the highest opt-in rate you can get, which is why you should be testing it every month. So for this example, just to show you what you can do in the editor, you can remove the image over here. And then what you can do is you can click on styles over here, which is gonna give you the styles of the entire form. So here's basically where you're gonna select, like, do we want this to be a pop-up form? Do we want it to be a full page form? Do we want it to be a flyout? No, we don't, pro tip. But for the sake of this example, let's just look at what that looks like. This is why we don't want it, obviously isn't as clear. Let's go ahead and choose pop-up. You can play around with the sizing and get it to where you want it to be. And then here's where we can choose, like, do we even want to have an image in our pop-up form? And if the answer is no, we can click no side image over here. And right away, you just get a good idea of what I was talking about, which is like now the first thing that your eyes are guided to is 10% off. So we're not looking at that picture that's on the side. Yes, it is good for branding, but it will likely convert worse. You can change the overall form background over here. So let's just say we want this to be white. We can go ahead and do that over here. And then same thing with the buttons. You could change the colors, change the font, and you just want to set this up to make sure that everything matches your branding. If you choose another template or if you're building this out from scratch, something that's important to note is that we want to make sure that this is showing on desktop and mobile. Now, once you start collecting data, you're going to be able to tell if your desktop form and your mobile form are converting at the same level or if one's converting better than the other. If you do see that they're converting differently and you want to optimize each individually, you can set up a desktop form and a mobile form, but it's really not necessary. And I'm going to show you why right now. What you want to make sure of when it comes to the mobile optimization is just that the form looks good on both device types. So as an example, when it comes to the font, like we want to make sure that the font is readable on both desktop and mobile. So basically this is quite small on mobile. So let's say I make it bigger. Now it's extremely clear that the get 10% off is there on mobile. And we have it here on desktop. You can play around and find a middle ground over here. Now, some brands' branding just makes it difficult. Like an Arial Black font is just harder to kind of get right on desktop and mobile. So this is an example of where like you might want to break this out. Let's say you did want to have a desktop form only. What you would be able to do is you go into targeting and behaviors, and you would scroll down to the bottom, and you would just select desktop. And right away, you're gonna see like we can't even preview this form on mobile anymore because it's just desktop. So what you could do is you could set this to desktop, edit it for desktop, and then you could clone it and then go ahead and create your mobile form only. Like I said, it's really not necessary. What we just wanna make sure of is that everything is clearly visible and displayed properly on both. Here, what we might wanna do is make the button text bigger so that it's really clear on both mobile and desktop. You can do the same thing over here. And now after a few changes, we can see that this is very clearly all visible on mobile. It works on desktop too. So this is what we can do here. So once everything is completely aligned with your branding on the first step of the form, what you're gonna make sure you do next is go over to the email opt-in step and just repeat the steps to make sure that everything is on brand. So again, you can go ahead and choose the styles for the whole form. You can change the text, you can change the button, you can change the branding on the input field. You'll do the same thing on the SMS step, and then you'll have a completely on-brand form that works for you. Once you've got your branding set, the next thing to make sure is optimized is your behavior of the form. So how is everything actually acting? If we look at our buttons, we want to make sure that all of our buttons are doing exactly what we want them to. And basically, the few things that your buttons can do are they can either submit the form, which is basically just going to take people to the next step. They can close the form, which we can see this no thanks should be doing, or it can take people to a specific URL. So let's say you have a specific collection that's 60% off and you want to navigate people to there effectively. You can have a pop-up form that just lets people know there's a sale going on and a button to direct them there. Or lastly, you can use this subscribe via text messaging feature, which we are not going to look at right now because we're just looking at email, but that's basically the core functionalities. So we're all set on the behavior here for the micro commitment. When it comes to the email opt-in step, what you're going to make sure that you have set up is where it says email input, you're going to want to make sure that this is a required input and that you have this message here saying field is required in case someone tries to click claim and doesn't fill it out. And then on the button, you're going to click the submit form action. And then when the submit form action is selected, it's going to ask you what list you want to submit someone's email to. And here's where this is taking it from the last step when we were initially setting up the form. But you just want to double check to make sure that this is right. We want everyone who's signing up from this form to go into our master email list. And then after they submit, we just want to make sure that we're showing them the next step. On the SMS side, we're going to go to claim over here, and then we have our submit form. It's going to go to SMS subscribers, and then it's going to show them the next step. So this all looks good. And then on your success step, here's where you're just gonna be able to determine, do you wanna give people the code right away or do you wanna send it to their inbox? We typically prefer sending it to their inbox, like I said, so that we can improve our sender reputation by getting them to open our first email. And Klaviyo actually has this new button where the action is go to inbox. That's actually gonna open someone's inbox app that they are using on their phone or on their computer to take them there super efficiently right away. Once your form is completely set up, you can also look at the teasers. You can have this be a circle. You can have it be in the corner of the site. You can be a rectangle. This is really your preference. Again, you want to customize this to your branding, make sure the font is there, make sure your background color matches your brand font. And this is a really good thing to have set up as well. And for the display settings, I do recommend keeping this to show after the form is closed. Arguably more important than the design and setup structure of your form is the targeting and behavior, that you're making sure it's showing to as many visitors as possible. What we're going to do here is instead of show form based on rules, what I suggest for the highest number of subscribers that you're going to pick up is going to be to show the form immediately. If you do want to A/B test this, you can do it based on rules, and you can say after a 5-second time delay as an example, or after someone scrolled the page for 30% of time, let's say. But like I said, I suggest doing this immediately. You have your frequency here. So if you don't want this to show to a visitor who's coming back to your store every day, you can say like, don't show it to someone until after 5 days from when they've clicked outside the form to close it. Again, we can see our devices here. So we want to show this on all devices, but you could select desktop or mobile only. And then here's where we want to uncheck these buttons that say click outside form to close, so that we're just making sure someone has a chance to see the offer without accidentally closing it. This alone is going to be a huge boost to your visibility and opt-in rates. So that's our display. And then when we go into targeting over here, we don't want to show this to existing Klaviyo profiles. So once Klaviyo understands that someone is already a subscriber and comes back to the site, we don't want to annoy them and ask them for their email address again if we already have it. There are other settings here, like to show it to all visitors, show to any existing Klaviyo profile, show to email subscribers only. So just to give you an example of like when you might want to use these, let's say you do have that sale that's going on and you want to have a link that's pointing people to the sale. You might want to show it to all visitors. if someone is an existing profile and there's a exclusive sale going on for email subscribers only, you might want to use this. Show to email subscribers only is a really good trigger to use when you want to get email subscribers to opt into SMS if they didn't when they were in your form. And then there's a bunch of other use cases here for these ones. You can set the URLs as you want. So let's say you only want to show your pop-up form on your homepage, which I do not suggest. Don't do that, but just so that you understand the settings. If you don't want to show the pop-up on certain URLs, so let's say like when someone's at their cart, we don't necessarily want to show them the get 10% off because they're already at their cart. They might be converting and we don't have to give away that margin. We could set this to cart. Like I said, if you're going to run that sale, you have another pop-up pointing people to the sale, then we might not want this 10% off that can't be stacked to go on that page for the sale. So I'll let you figure out these use cases, but this is a valuable thing to understand. When it comes to locations, so let's say you want to have a different offer for someone coming from Canada versus someone coming from the States. Klaviyo can actually identify basically everyone's location based on their IP address. So you can show this to different people based on their location. And then let's say your traffic that's coming from TikTok is wildly different and cares about something else compared to someone coming from meta ads. If you have UTM parameters on your ads, which I assume that you probably do, then you could actually make sure that this pop-up form is only showing to people from TikTok. And let's say you have way cheaper CPMs and the traffic's way cheaper. Maybe you want to test a 20% offer for anyone coming from TikTok, but still show 10% off to anyone coming from other sources. And then lastly, when it comes to cart content, like let's say you only want to trigger a pop-up when someone has over $1,000 worth of items in their cart so that you make sure you're getting them a good offer. You can do that with these settings. So that's a full walkthrough of all of the settings that you have available to you. But for this initial pop-up form that is going to be used to grow your email list from new site traffic, these are the settings that we want to have in place right here. All right, I think I mentioned it twice now, but I'm gonna mention it one more time. A/B test your pop-up forms every single month to keep reaching higher in terms of that opt-in rate. The highest leverage A/B tests that you should be running are basically the offers. So the offer is going to make the biggest difference in your opt-in rate compared to anything that's like copy, design, or behavior related. So if you're running a % off versus $1 off, 10% versus 15%, like that's gonna make the biggest difference. Every customer demo reacts differently to different types of offers. So your customer demo might react way better to $10 off their first order versus 10% off. If you are going to do $1 off versus percentage, I would just take your AOV and basically choose a dollar amount that represents 10% off that AOV. You can test free shipping, which works really well with some brands. You can test cash back. You can test a free gift with purchase. And there's way more that you can test, but ultimately you should be testing your offer consistently to see what moves the needle. The second highest leverage testing you can run is on the behavior. So do you have a micro yes step in place like the one we just set up? 9 times out of 10, this is going to convert better than without, but running it as an A/B test does make sense. Are you collecting zero-party data? So asking a question in your form to get some data on who a subscriber is can work really, really well to drive higher conversion rates on your form and then also give you really good data to convert that subscriber. The form loading time, so is it loading immediately? Is it loading 10 seconds later? Different pages that are triggering the pop-up form, setting it to exit intent. So these are all different behaviors that can be A/B tested. On the copy side, you can test very short copy versus longer copy. So as an example here, all we're saying is get 10% off your first order, but we could try and test this against get weekly updates to everything cool that's happening with the brand. Another really high leverage test to run on copy is actually showing the offer. So saying something like get 10% off versus saying something like you've got a mystery offer, which is going to be 10% on the back end, but to new site visitors that can convert better. And then finally on the design side, like I mentioned before, testing an image versus no image in the pop-up, the images that are being used. So are you showing a product image? Are you showing a lifestyle image? What type of lifestyle image are you showing? All of these things can make a big difference. And then even the text sizes. So like I said, like we made sure that this is visible on mobile, but if you have an older customer demo maybe where bigger text sizes would be better, then you would want to test that as well. So now that we have our pop-up form set up and we have email subscribers coming onto our list, let's talk about what types of emails we're going to be sending them. Basically, there's 2 different types of emails that you're going to be sending through Klaviyo. There's automated flow emails and there's campaign emails. Automated flows are automated sequences of emails that are going to be sent automatically based on a user's behavior. So they're going to be triggered based on something that a user does. The easiest examples here are like an abandoned cart email. So someone abandons their cart, they're going to get an automated email sequence that gets sent to them, or someone subscribes to our list. That's what's going to trigger our automated welcome nurture series. Campaigns, on the other hand, are manual one-off sends, and you're going to use your campaigns anytime there's something new to announce that doesn't belong in automation. So anytime you're running a new sale, you have a new product launch, you have new content that you want to share for summer, a new blog post you want to share, anything that's just a one-off send is going to be a campaign. You're going to use flows to drive as much customer lifetime value as you can from your customer journey, and you're going to use campaigns to capitalize on time-sensitive moments. Now, something I see a lot of brands doing is actually sending a lot of campaigns for something that could be an automation. So if you ever recognize that you're sending the same campaign like weekly or monthly or daily, it's probably something that can be triggered by an automation. Now, we're going to look at how this actually technically applies inside of Klaviyo, but both should be coordinated to avoid message overlap and fatigue. All the time when I'm auditing brands, I see the same problem, which is that they have really high unsubscribe rates and spam complaint rates because the left hand isn't talking to the right hand. And what I mean by that is they're sending out campaigns not knowing that someone has also received a welcome email, an abandoned cart email, a post-purchase email, all within 24 hours. And it just becomes like this very disjointed messaging that makes sense why someone would want to unsubscribe from, and really just comes from a lack of understanding and thinking of someone's customer journey and what's going on each side of those campaigns and flows to make sure that we're not crossing paths. All right, now let's talk about the 7 absolutely core automated flows that every single e-commerce brand under the sun needs. We're gonna go into each one of these 7 flows in detail, and I'm gonna show you exactly how to build them out in Klaviyo. And I'm also going to make sure that by the end of this, you understand flow triggers and flow filters, which is really important to make sure that the right people are getting the right messages at the right times. And I'm also just gonna show you why you shouldn't be using Klaviyo default templates for your emails so that you can get better performance and conversion from these automated flows. So we're starting off with our welcome series. What is a welcome series? Our welcome series is going to deliver the first purchase offer that we're basically promising to someone when they sign up in our pop-up form. It's going to introduce our brand, and it's going to nurture our subscribers towards their first purchase. By the end of your welcome series, someone should have a full 100% understanding of why your brand is the only one in your market that they should be buying from whenever they need a product that you sell. So let's go over to Klaviyo. We're going to go into the flows section, and it is really easy to get overwhelmed in here. So I'm going to make this as simple as possible for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on create flow, and Klaviyo does have templates for flows. The reason why you don't want to use Klaviyo's flow templates are because your automated flows are the backbone of your customer journey. Like, these are emails that you absolutely need to be fired at the right time to the right people. And every brand is completely unique when it comes to how these flows should be set up. And if you're just using a simple default template from Klaviyo, like, it's going to be generic. It's not going to align with your customer journey. So for all those reasons, it's way better to start from scratch and do this the right way for your brand. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and click build your own over here, and we're going to call this welcome series, and we're going to click create flow. Now here's where we encounter Klaviyo's flow triggers for the first time. So a trigger is literally just the action that is going to trigger the start of this flow for whoever triggered it. So because this is our welcome series, our trigger is going to be someone being added to a list. So we're going to click add to list. Now we have our lists over here. Which list will trigger this flow? It's going to be our master email list. So you're going to make sure that you choose the same list that we selected in our pop-up form. Profile filters are what is going to make the difference between someone receiving an email or not receiving an email. Every single time that Klaviyo sends someone an email from an automated flow, right before they send it out, they check on the filters to make sure that we really want to send to this person. And I'm going to show you the really clear reason why we don't want to send every single email in all of our flows to everyone. So when someone's coming into our welcome series, as we said, the goal of our welcome series is to nurture someone to their first purchase. What that means by default is that after someone places an order, we don't want them to get any more emails from the welcome series. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use the profile filters feature in Klaviyo, and we're going to add a profile filter to specifically tell Klaviyo that we only want to send emails in this flow to someone who has never placed an order. So what we're going to do is we're going to say what someone has done or not done. We're going to say placed order 0 times over all time. So if someone is signing up to our list and they're coming in from checkout, let's just say, like they don't go into our welcome series because they are just placing their order. So if someone is signing up to our list and they have already placed an order 6 months ago, we don't want them to be nurtured to placing their first purchase. So every time Klaviyo is about to send these emails in our flow, it's just going to check, has someone placed an order before? And what that means is if someone has never placed an order, they sign up from our pop-up form at email 1, and then we wait 2 days and we send them our next email. If they have placed an order within those 2 days, Klaviyo is just going to identify that and not send them that second email. So we can go ahead and click save over here. Every brand might have some different filter requirements as to, well, if someone does this, then I don't want to send it to them. So we work with a lot of brands that have a B2B component as well as a D2C component. And if we know that someone is a B2B customer, we might just want to filter them out so that they're not receiving our D2C welcome series. Once you have your profile filter set, you can go ahead and click save on the flow here, confirm and save. And now we have our trigger and our profile filters for our welcome series set. So now what you're going to see on the left here is all of the actions that you have inside of flows. So these are the different things that can automatically happen after the flow is triggered. So we have an email over here. We can send someone an SMS, text message. We can update a specific property on their profile. We can add them or remove them from a certain list. We can trigger a webhook, which is definitely very advanced for this video, or we can have an internal alert sent. So this is like an email sent to someone on your team notifying them that someone is in this flow. Next, we have timing. So we have the ability to add time delays in between the different actions. And then finally, we have logic. So we can have conditional split set up to say, if this is true, then perform this action. And if it's not true, then perform this other action. So at a high level, these are the building blocks for flows, and it's just great to understand how all of these things work. In your welcome series, what you want to make sure you're doing is sending people the code to redeem the offer in your pop-up form right away as soon as they sign up. So we don't want an initial time delay over here. And basically what we have here is our first email. So here's where you can see all of the details that are going into this email. You have the email name. So this is email number 1. I highly suggest keeping your flow nomenclature, the flow naming, really standard. So this can be called welcome series email number 1 as an example, because when we're reviewing the data later on, you're going to see that it's important to have these set so that we know at a high level dashboard view where different emails are coming from. So then you have the subject line for the email. You have the preview text for the email. So this can say something like welcome to insert brand name. And then you have your preview text, which can say something like 10% off inside. So then you have your sender email address. This can be coming from any email address that's associated with the brand. What's really important here is that it's using the same domain name that we set up in the domain settings earlier on in this video. So I can make this Elliot at the dispatch.agency. I can make this support at the dispatch.agency, and then you're going to set your reply to email address. So this is where a lot of brands use their customer support email address, like support@yourbrandname.com. Whatever your customer support email address is, it's a good one to use here so that automatically when someone's replying to any email you're sending through Klaviyo, it's going to go into your customer service inbox. And then we get to the template to use. So here is where we're actually going to be looking at the creative for the email. As I mentioned before, you're going to see much better results if you use customized creative that's built outside of Klaviyo compared to if you're using a template that Klaviyo is giving you, or even if you're building from scratch in Klaviyo. The reason why is because if you use a template, essentially you're going to look like every other brand that's using a template. Design is super important for new people who are coming into your brand to understand that you are a serious, legitimate brand, and for them to immediately connect the quality of your communications, your marketing, with the quality of your product, which they obviously can't touch and feel in real life. So the closest thing we can get is having extremely high quality visuals that we're showing them. If you simply do not have the time or the resources to design emails outside of Klaviyo, you can go ahead and choose a template. Now, what that would look like is clicking use template over here as an example. And essentially here, you're going to see that a lot of the templates aren't that useful anyways, because like this is an image GIF that's in place and you can't actually edit this image within Klaviyo. So you'd have to bring in another image anyways. And if you did want to bring in another image, like you'd have to make sure that all of the dimensions were the same for these images and this GIF in order to even get it to render the same. The other big drawback when it comes to designing emails inside of Klaviyo is that it makes it much harder to be on brand and to make sure that your emails are rendering with all of your brand fonts in all the inboxes you're sending to. So what's important to note here is you can have your custom font within Klaviyo, but you need to set a fallback font. And what's going to happen in a lot of instances is depending on the device that someone's using, depending on on the inbox provider that they're using, the brand font that you actually are selecting here very likely won't appear in their inbox. So that's why every custom font has a web safe fallback font. And essentially what it means is if I'm using this custom font over here, when I go to preview the email, the way that it looks in Klaviyo right now just is not the way that it's going to look in everyone's inbox. When you design an email outside of Klaviyo in Figma and use image slices, which is what I'm about to show you, it's going to ensure that your branding, your fonts are always rendering the way that they're supposed to look in everyone's inbox. And ultimately, when I say it's really important to have good design, what I also mean is it's really important to have good branding. And it's really important that the branding that someone's seeing from your ads on Facebook to your website to your pop-up form to your first emails are all consistent. So if you have a specific font that you use across your funnel and then someone's receiving your email and the font that they're seeing is not aligned with the rest of that brand font, ultimately these are the moments where you are cultivating your initial trust that someone has in your brand. And if you don't have that consistency, that trust gets lost. One more big drop off, which most brands really don't take into account until they start sending emails, is that the emails you're going to see on desktop and mobile and how they render is going to be completely different. So basically you can see right here, this heading looks decent when we're looking at it on desktop. But when we look at it on mobile, you can see it's rendering differently. And we have like this one word off, just as an example, which is on one line, and that's not happening on desktop. So number one, it makes QAing your emails a lot harder. And number two, this text is going to render differently on every different type of device, on every different device size and every inbox. So it just makes that quality control way harder. But again, if you're using image slices, then you know that the email is going to render exactly the same pixel for pixel on desktop and mobile. Just because it is still important to understand how the Klaviyo editor works. Although most of the emails you should be building should be with image slices, basically there are all of these different types of blocks that you can use in the editor. So you can see here, there's an image block. We have our text blocks over here. It is very simple to just edit anything that you would want to edit here. You have splits, which is basically going to allow you to have two separate columns. You have the ability to add buttons, which you can then link things out to. You have dividers, which are going to basically just look like a horizontal line. You have your social links. So whether you want to put them in your footer or your header, you can just directly put your social links that we set in the brand settings. You can add a spacer to just add more space to something. You can add a table if you want. So essentially all of these things that I just went over can be done inside of Figma. But the one thing that has to be done in Klaviyo, and one of the big advantages to using Klaviyo, is their product block. So essentially what the product block does is it allows you to put in either static or dynamic products directly from Shopify into your emails. So static would basically mean we're just choosing products that are coming from Shopify. And then dynamic would actually mean that based on specific criteria we choose, it's going to show different products to different people. So as an example, let's say we always want to show the newest bestsellers, the bestsellers within the last month to people. So if you have inventory that's constantly turning over, new styles coming in and out of stock, then it might make sense to always show what's currently best-selling versus another brand with 10 SKUs that they know are always going to be in stock, always wanting to show like the 2 or 3 consistent bestsellers. So we can just call this bestsellers. And then by default, Klaviyo already has a bunch of these kind of predefined settings in place here. So we can choose best-selling products. We could say over the last 3 days or over the last 90 days. Then we can say what additional filters would you like to apply? So let's say we only want to show the best sellers, but we don't want to show products that are in a specific category. That's where we could select the category here and say excludes that. If we don't want to show any products that are like under $5, you could set a minimum price. If you don't want to show products that have a really low stock level, you can do that here. And then basically you would just like create product feed, and then you can use it right here. And this is going to be dynamic, and this is going to change every time an email is sent. It's going to check what are the best sellers over the last 90 days. And as that changes, it will change in this email dynamically. So there's a lot of great use cases for dynamic product feeds, but that is the one thing that you have to factor in if you're building emails outside of Klaviyo, that if you do want to show products dynamically, you'll have to just add in that product feed. The last thing I'll call out while we're in the editor here is that you should absolutely have a footer. In your footer, what is good to have are your social links a lot of the time so that people can go follow you on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. And then what you absolutely need to have for compliance is your organization details emails and your unsubscribe language. So basically by default in all of your emails, Klaviyo actually won't let you send an email without an unsubscribe link just for compliance. But if you don't add one in, they're gonna add one that's like kind of ugly. So you wanna make sure that you are setting up a footer in order for this to display as good as it possibly can. So just like in our pop-up form builder, you can basically edit text the exact same way by choosing the fonts, choosing the colors, choosing the sizes, etc. And this is another instance of where we're gonna see dynamic text. So basically, whenever you see these curly brackets, what this means is that Klaviyo is pulling this in from somewhere else. So basically for organization name and organization full address, this is pulling this in from our Klaviyo settings where we set that up. It's pulling in the current year so that you don't have to worry about changing this every single year. And then where it says unsubscribe, this is actually unique unsubscribe link is going to be generated for each and every recipient so that Klaviyo knows who is going to that page to unsubscribe. They don't need to put in their email address or anything. And it is basically just a unique link for everyone. Now that I showed you what an email with a template looks like, let me show you what you should actually be aiming for when you're designing outside of Klaviyo and why it's so much better. So I'll go deeper into what makes good email design, show you a bunch of different templates later on. This is a welcome flow that we built for one of our recent clients, gumball.com. And at a glance, just look at the branding here compared to what we just saw on that Klaviyo template. Something as simple as the placement of these graphics cannot be done in Klaviyo. The templates in Klaviyo and the HTML editor are simply too rigid to allow for any of this advanced design. And it's simple to see how someone who's coming from a beautiful ad for Gumball, they're going to their beautiful website, and then they're receiving their first email, will of course have more trust and be more engaged with the brand when they see that the design is completely consistent and also just extremely engaging. Because I have another video that goes really in depth on how to design emails in Figma, I'm not going to go through the entire process right now, but I do want you to see what Figma looks like. I want you to see what good email design looks like, and I'll show you more examples later. But this is a full welcome series that's been built inside of Figma. And then just to give you an idea of how you actually go from this to an email inside of Klaviyo, essentially what you do is you take image slices. So you go ahead and slice every image inside of here. And then what you do is you simply just export it as a PNG or a JPEG slice. And then inside of Klaviyo, you can see that this is an image right here. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna drag in our image, and then we're just gonna select, we're gonna upload a new image, and then we're just gonna bring in the image that we just had. We're gonna go ahead and compress it. And just like that, the first section of our email from Figma is in Klaviyo. It's really quick, really efficient, and the level of design and branding is just way above what we could have done if we had tried to build this in Klaviyo. Now, when it comes to the actual content of your welcome series, I just wanna give you a high level idea of what the strategy should look like. Of course, every brand has a different customer journey, the information, the context, all of the messaging and offers that you would wanna present to a new subscriber is gonna be different for every unique brand. But what I'm about to share with you is a really, really good baseline for 99% of D2C brands based on all of the A/B tests that we've run on welcome series over the last few years. So essentially in your first email, you're gonna wanna have your brand logo, and your whole job of your first email is give someone the code to redeem the offer that was in your pop-up form and get them back to the site to shop as efficiently as possible. So that's the goal in your first welcome email. And then the other things that you can include in your first welcome email are either like a short letter from the founder about the brand mission, origin, or story. You can share your brand values, what makes your products unique, or you can showcase your best-selling products and collections. So depending on your unique brand and what subscribers would care about most to get them to convert, you would want to choose one or two of these things. Next up, you would want to have a 1-day time delay in your flow in Klaviyo. And then in your second email, you basically just want to explain your unique selling points. Why are you the best brand in your market? Why should they only consider buying from you because of XYZ reason and not buy from any of your competitors? Massive pro tip, but in every email in your welcome flow, you want to remind your new subscribers about the offer that's still valid for them. So a ton of brands just give that offer out in the first email and then never mention it again. But each of your emails in your welcome flow should focus on a different reason why someone should want to buy from you, and then just subtly remind them of the fact that they can still save on their first order. You can do that with something like a banner up top here, and then the rest of your content in each email should be very focused. Email number 3 is what you offer. So here's where you really want to help guide subscribers to the best product for them by highlighting your top 3 to 5 best sellers or best selling collections. Then you're going to want to have another 1-day time delay in place. And this is where you're going to want to feature your brand story. So why did you create the brand? Is it because you had a problem that you want to solve? In a new new subscriber's mind, why should they care about your brand story? Ultimately, not every single brand has a brand story that's going to really get someone to convert, but usually brands were started because there was a need to solve a problem in the market, and connecting human to human and putting a face behind the brand can go a really, really long way for a lot of brands in driving conversion. So then you're gonna want another 1 day time delay, and then email 5, you're gonna want to be a pure us versus them email. So lay it out in plain English, directly as you can, why someone should buy from you instead of your competitors. So choose an angle. Imagine your Starbucks, like you have to be explaining why someone should drink Starbucks instead of every other coffee brand that is out there. Your next email, you'll want to just focus on spotlighting customer reviews and customer testimonials. In your next email after that, you can focus on your FAQs. So what are the questions that potential customers, prospects most frequently ask? A lot of brands have this page set up on their website, but most people don't just go out and find that FAQs page themselves. So putting these FAQs in an email that's getting sent to new subscribers who are on the fence goes a long way to drive conversions. And then you can have brand specific emails. So basically every brand is going to have their unique conversion angles around why someone should care about buying from them specifically. It might be because your brand has been around 100 years and that's why people should trust you. There's so many different angles that could apply to different brands. So it's really just about thinking around what your customer would care about that would get them to buy. And I'm going to repeat this here because it's so important. The goal is just to make sure that new subscribers know everything that they need to know to nurture them to their first purchase. So there should be no information that could help drive someone to convert that you're holding back and not showing in your welcome email. And you can see exactly what that should look like over here. So when we look at our flows for Gumball, this was built specifically for Gumball based on what's unique to their brand, but you can see the building blocks and the fundamentals of exactly what I just talked about presented here. All right, so you're gonna design those emails in Figma, you're gonna slice them, bring them into Klaviyo, put in your subject lines and preview text. So most brands are gonna want 1 day time delays in between each email here, and then you're just gonna drag in your next emails and build out the flow that way. Once everything looks great, you're gonna go ahead and set your emails live 1 by 1. And as soon as that's done, as soon as people start getting added to the list, with this flow live, they're going to start making their way through. Welcome series done. Now we're moving on to our abandoned checkout flow. So our abandoned checkout flow is gonna be triggered by a checkout is started, and it's going to be sent only when an order has not been completed. So now if you're connecting the dots, that's gonna be our flow filter here. Now, I know that I just said we shouldn't be using Klaviyo's templates for flows, but I wanna make your life as easy as possible. And the truth is, with abandoned checkout, abandoned cart, other abandonment flows, the way that we're going to dynamically show different customers the products that they left in their cart gets pretty technical. And I just wanna make this as easy as possible for you. So only for the sake of that, we're gonna use a template, but we're gonna modify it the way we want to. You can go ahead and click Create Flow inside of Klaviyo. And then what we're going to do here is search checkout. You're going to see when you search checkout, nothing comes up. The reason why is because Klaviyo calls your abandoned checkout flow an abandoned cart flow. So you can actually see right here when we look at the abandoned cart reminder, if you click on standard, the trigger is checkout started. So it says cart, but it's really an abandoned checkout flow. Now this is actually a big deal because a lot of brands don't even know that you can have an abandoned cart flow and an abandoned checkout flow in Klaviyo. So they just set up their abandoned cart flow thinking that their bases are covered. But unfortunately what happens is then if someone adds something to cart and doesn't start a checkout, they're not gonna go into any flow. So that's exactly why right after this, I'm gonna show you how to set up the abandoned cart flow as well. So we can go ahead and click use template over here. And essentially what you're gonna have here is you have email and SMS. We're just gonna focus on email for now. So starting from the top, we have our trigger as checkout started. The filters that you wanna make sure are in place are number 1, placed orders 0 times since starting this flow. And this is just gonna make sure that if someone starts a checkout and then is now in this flow, before we send that abandoned cart, abandoned checkout email to them, Klaviyo is just gonna check to make sure that they haven't already placed their order. And then what some brands wanna do is also just add on the has not been in flow in the last 7 days property. Basically what that's going to do is just say, if someone has already been through this flow and they've already received abandoned checkout emails, we don't wanna bombard them with too many abandoned checkout emails. Personally, we keep this to 2 or 3 days for our clients just because it's gonna help you generate more revenue. If someone's coming back to the site and they're starting another checkout, it means that they are interested. So why would we not want to remind them about that checkout as well? Now, the next thing that Klaviyo Klaviyo has in their template is a 4-hour time delay. The fact of the matter is shorter time delays typically convert better. This is something that we A/B test for every single one of our clients and something you should A/B test when you initially set this up. So you can test a 4-hour time delay versus a 2-hour time delay as an example. Next, what you're gonna see here is our first conditional split in action that we're seeing. So the split that Klaviyo has in the template is saying if they can receive an SMS, send them an SMS. And if they can't receive an SMS, then after 4 hours, send them an email instead. I don't advise setting up your flow like this just because you don't know if someone is going to convert based on an SMS or an email. It's not guaranteed just because an SMS has a higher open rate that's what's going to drive a conversion. There's just advantages to email that SMS doesn't have, like visuals as an example. What we do instead is we send the email and SMS either at the same time or very close to each other. Because at this point, if an email is going to convert someone better than an SMS, then what's going to happen here is someone's going to get the SMS and then they're only going to get the email 20 hours later. But really after an abandoned checkout, like every hour counts. You know someone was close to that purchase and you want to take advantage of that as soon as possible. Now, in terms of the strategy and the content that's going to go into your abandoned checkout and your abandoned cart flows, really you should be branching this between prospects and existing customers because fundamentally prospects have very different reasons for not being ready to convert than existing customers who are coming back to the site, have already had a great experience with the product. So that's why you want the content to be different in each of these. So for prospects, number one, we want to remind them of the welcome offer that they can still take advantage of because they've never purchased before. We want to remind them of what they had behind, and we're actually going to do that using dynamic cart content. In Klaviyo, we're going to show them the exact products that they left in their checkout. And then this is what's really important. Over here, we want to make sure we're communicating why they should buy from us. So we need to consistently be reminding our subscribers around our USPs, our unique selling points, and why they should be buying from us instead of competitors. Like I said, every hour counts. So you would want maybe something like a 20-hour time delay in place. This is really different for every brand, but that's a good starting point. Then again, we want to remind them of their welcome offer, remind them of what's in their cart, and then we want to just address 1 to 2 common objections. So what are the most common objections around why people don't buy from you? Is it your price? Is it because they're not sure that your product has the value that you're asking for? Maybe we want to highlight specific customer reviews to speak to the amazing value. But ultimately, you want to do your best to understand why people aren't buying from you and then speak to that objection as clearly as you can. Then you absolutely want a minimum of 3 abandoned cart emails for prospects, and you can have your third abandoned cart email be structured similar to the second one. Essentially, you just want to pick another potential objection that you can focus on and speak to that as directly as possible. While again, of course, continuing to remind them of the products that were in their cart to just remind them of the interest. And then basically on the other side of your branch, you have your existing customers who are coming back to your site, starting a checkout, and then abandoning. Essentially, the strategy is similar. You just want to instead be focused on the objections that a returning customer has and the different incentives that you can have to get them back. So that returning customer is not eligible for your acquisition offer anymore. But do you have a subscription program, like a subscribe and save offer? Do you have a loyalty program? What other ways can you incentivize them to get them to purchase again? If we go back to Klaviyo, I'm gonna remove this SMS for now. And what I'm gonna show you how to do is basically just set up a conditional split the way that we want to over here. So what we're gonna have here is I'm just gonna say in our conditional split, instead of can they receive email or SMS, what I'm gonna say is, has someone placed an order at least once over all time? Yes or no? If they've placed an order at least once over all time, they're an existing customer, returning customer. If the answer is no, that means they're a prospect. And then we can go ahead and just build out our time delays and our secondary emails with all of our content from here. So like I was saying with our welcome email, what I want to show you here is the exact use case on how you're going to build out emails with designs that are coming from Figma mixed with the dynamic content that has to be built in Klaviyo. So this is an abandoned checkout email that we designed for one of our clients, Red Stick Spice. And what I want to show you here is the exact use case on how you're going to build out emails with designs that are coming from Figma mixed with the dynamic content that has to be built in Klaviyo. So essentially we can see all of the image slices that were pulled in from Figma over here. So we have a beautiful abandoned checkout email. And then when it comes time to show our prospects the specific items that they had in their checkout, they abandoned, you're gonna see here this dynamic content over here. So we have a table set up, and the reason why I wanted you to create the abandoned checkout flow with Klaviyo's template is because they actually create this for you. So this is what you'll see in your account when you go ahead and create this template from the flow. And basically they've set this up so that it's automatically pulling this in for you. So you don't have to understand all the intricacies around how this works, but essentially it's a table with two columns. And we have in column 1 an image. And basically Klaviyo is using this dynamic variable to pull in the specific image related to that product. Then on the text side, on this column, we have the product title, so the name of the product, and then you have quantity and the total. If you don't want to show the quantity or the total as an example, you can simply delete this, and then you'll just have the name of the product. To show you an example of what this is going to look like when it's set up properly and when it's done dynamically, you can see here what this looks like when we're previewing this for different people. So based on what they had in their checkout, it's just going to show them the title of the product and the image associated with it. Now, the last thing you need to know about setting up your abandoned checkout flow properly is that this is the link address that you need to have on all of your image slices. And that's going to be this curly brackets event.extra.checkout_URL. And actually, if you go into the template, one of the email designs that you're going to see, you're going to see that in the back to my cart button, Klaviyo actually has this linked already. So you can just copy that and attach it. And what this URL is going to do is it's going to direct each specific person back to the link that was saved when they started a checkout, so that it's taking them right back to the checkout. They don't have to go back and add products to cart again. It's all going to be ready for them to place their order. All right, and we're done with our abandoned checkout flow. So next, onto the abandoned cart flow. Our abandoned cart flow is going to be very, very similar to our abandoned checkout flow. The only difference is it's going to be triggered when someone adds something to their cart, but they haven't started a checkout and they haven't completed an order. So exactly like we just did, we're gonna go ahead and click Create Flow. And then here within the templates, again, because we wanna make sure that the dynamic table is set up properly, we can go ahead and search cart over here. And what we're gonna see is the abandoned cart reminder with the added to cart trigger. So you're gonna see here, this is triggered by the added to cart trigger, and we can click Use Template. And then the strategy in terms of the content should be very similar to your abandoned checkout flow. If there's something really unique about your customer journey, which is going to mean that people are going to have a different experience fundamentally when they're at their cart versus checkout, and you want to have different messaging included in both of those, that's totally fine. But for most brands, you can have the same content here. And the reason why it's fine to have the same content is because these flows are not going to overlap. If someone starts a checkout, we're going to make sure that they're not sent any emails from our flow that's triggered by the added to cart. And the way that we're going to do that is you're going to go into your trigger. We have our add to cart as the metric, and then under flow filters, you can see Klaviyo already has it as a default. You just want to make sure that we're specifying that checkout started is 0 times since starting this flow and placed order is 0 times since starting this flow. And again, content and angles can be really similar to the abandoned checkout flow, so I would go about building this out the same way. And that's essentially it for the abandoned cart flow. So at this point, we have our 3 main revenue driving flows set up. Now we're gonna go on to our browse abandonment flow. Our browse abandonment flow is going to be triggered when someone views a product on our website, but they haven't added anything to cart, they haven't started checkout, and they haven't placed an order. So they're a little higher up in the funnel. So what we're gonna do is click on Create Flow. We can see Browse Abandonment right here. So you can click Browse Abandonment. I guess what I should have described before is it's totally fine and it's actually optimal to use Klaviyo's templates for the trigger and flow filter setup because it just makes our lives way easier. But when it comes to the actual content and the branching and the logic of the flows, that's where you want to make it unique to your customer journey. You can go ahead and click Use Template right over here. And then Klaviyo only has 1 email in their Browse Abandonment flow, so you might want to have more. And if we go to the trigger over here, we can see it's the viewed product metric. Now here is where we have a problem and where we need to make a change. So in the profile filters that Klaviyo sets up by default, all they're saying is someone has started a checkout 0 times since starting the flow and placed an order, but they're not saying that someone has added to cart 0 times. So this is where you need to go in and add this in yourself. And basically you're just gonna go ahead and click end, and we're gonna say what someone has done, added to cart 0 times since starting this flow. So now we know like we're only sending this browse abandonment flow to someone who has not moved down the funnel at all. So we can go ahead and click save over here. I think has not been in the flow in the last 30 days is fine for most brands, just because if you are higher up in the funnel, you're not necessarily showing enough interest for us to kind of remind you that often. Someone could be coming to your site several times in the space of a week. We don't really want to send them an email every single time. So this makes sense. This time delay, again, is a really great A/B testing opportunity. If you ever want to run an A/B test in a flow, this is how you do it. Essentially, what you would do is basically set up a conditional split over here before the time delay. delay. And what you would do is you would take a random sample of 50% of the people who come into the flow. You would click save. So you would just duplicate over the time delay and the email, can clone it just like that. And then we can just change one of them to 4 hours, let's say, as an example. And now 50% are gonna get our browse abandonment email after 2 hours and 50% are gonna get it after 4 hours. So now you know how to run an A/B test in a flow. In terms of the content that you wanna have in your browse abandonment flow, you wanna branch this out ideally between prospects and existing customers as well. They have fundamentally different objections at this point in the funnel. And then essentially you wanna remind them of the products that they liked, that they were viewing, with the dynamic content in Klaviyo. And then again, you want to make sure you're highlighting the specific things that make the brand unique. So the real difference when it comes to your browse flow versus your abandoned cart, abandoned checkout flow is because we know the level of interest in the product just is not as high because they didn't take the action to add to cart or start a checkout. In our copywriting, we want to make sure that we're speaking to them in understanding that and potentially even pushing them to other products that we have on the website. It's also a really good idea to highlight as much social proof as possible in your browse abandonment flow for people who have not taken the step to decide that they're interested or not yet. And you can see for Gumball, like exactly what this looks like in practice. And just to give you an idea of what your setup is going to look like, it's going to be very similar to the abandoned cart, abandoned checkout flow. This is what we're seeing in our template. So right here, we have our table again. Something that's important to understand is like all of the code that you see here that Klaviyo is putting in here is different based on the event. So that's why we're going ahead and using these templates, because if we had to go and set up all of these ourselves and find all of this specific code ourselves, it would take a bit longer. So just so that you know. And again, if we're just looking at different people who would go into the browse abandonment flow, we can see here that it's just pulling in all of the different products that have been viewed. Now here is a pro tip for you. So in the Klaviyo template, basically Klaviyo is actually putting in the organization URL here. They're gonna link out anyone who viewed a product back to the homepage. If you wanna link someone out back to the specific product page, what you can go ahead and do is click preview and test on the email. And basically what you're gonna see is all of the properties associated with that event. So anytime that metric is triggered, it's gonna have all of these properties that come with it. So when someone viewed a product, we know the name of the product, the ID, the price, and then what we also have is the URL of that product specifically. So instead of linking someone back to the homepage of the website, we can actually put this code in here. So I just clicked on it to copy it and pasted it over here. And now we can click save. And now when I preview it, what you're gonna see is instead of linking back to the homepage, when I click shop now, we have the cook the book over here. It's gonna take me to the cook the book page, which in terms of a funnel and getting me back to the point where I should add to cart and purchase is just way less friction than if they sent me to the homepage. So that's it for our browse abandonment flow. Next up, we get to our post purchase. So you absolutely need a flow of emails to get sent to people after their purchase, specifically important after someone's first purchase. The goal after someone purchases for the first time is to make sure you're giving them all of the content, education, resources that they need to ensure that they're getting the most value out of the product and your brand. Because ultimately, if someone does not have a good experience with your product the first time, then it's very unlikely that they're gonna come back. So we wanna use email and SMS as our tools here to make sure that the information that you might have stored somewhere on your website or on Instagram or somewhere else, that we are doing our best to get it right in front of them at the right time so that they can take full advantage of everything your product has to offer. And then for existing customers who are coming back, buying again, we want to thank them for their loyalty. We want to potentially cross-sell them into other product categories. We want to push them into a subscription program, a loyalty program, anything that's going to help you maximize your LTV. So technically our post-purchase flow is going to be triggered whenever someone is placing an order. So what we can do here, we can start this with a Klaviyo template as well. We can say post-purchase follow-up right here. It's going to be triggered by a placed order. And basically when we click use template, what we're going to see here is the trigger of the flow is, we can see it right here, someone has placed an order. And then Klaviyo doesn't set any filters in place by default. So essentially there might be filters that you would want in place here, but for the sake of this example, we don't need any right now. So Klaviyo has a 1-day time delay in place. They have this delayed at a specific time at 9 a.m. I really advise against specifying the time of day you want to send your emails, because when you think about it, if someone is shopping and buying from your website at 10 p.m., then that's probably their typical pattern of behavior. They probably shop at 10 p.m. So for us to just assume that they're online and engaging with emails and shopping at 9 a.m. as an example, like doesn't really make sense. We should just send it like 1 day later after they did the thing that told us they are active at that time. So on the post-purchase side, we actually don't need anything in terms of dynamic content from Klaviyo. So we can just start this one from scratch, create manually. And this flow is going to be triggered when someone places an order. In terms of the filters that are in place here, like you might not want a subscription customer to get something. You might not want a B2B customer to get anything post-purchase, or you might want them to be in a different flow. So our post-purchase flow is going to be so unique to every brand's customer journey. So you should set these filters based on what makes sense for your brand. So I'll go ahead and click save over here. So in terms of content that we want to have in the post-purchase flow, we want to thank customers for their purchase. We want to help them make the most of their purchase. Any content that's going to help them do that. We can show use cases. We can show any content that's going to help them do that. Another great example of something that you can have for your brand is a customer service check-in. So instead of waiting for a customer who has a problem or isn't loving the product to reach out to you with customer service, just having a touch point where you reach out to them proactively. And again, this is automated. So it's not like it even takes a customer service resource for you to do this. Just reaching out with a plain text email and saying, hey, thank you so much for your first order. Would love to hear how things are going. Let us know if you need any help or if you have any questions. This is a really, really valuable touch point that most brands do not implement. Then you want to start thinking of how you can actually push them into their next order. So if you have a subscription program, if you have a loyalty program, anything that they should know about in terms of next offers to get them into that next purchase is something that should be showcased here. And then for returning customers, the focus, like I said, is really just on showing appreciation for their loyalty, shopping with the brand. And then if you have additional offers that can push them into a higher LTV category, then this is where you want to show that. And then in case you're visual like me, here's how you can see how this exactly plays out for the flows we built out for gumball.com. So we let them know that their vending journey begins. We're letting them know that they made a great choice. We're letting them know that they should get expert machine tips to make sure that they have everything they need in order to operate these machines the right way. We want to make sure that we're setting them up for success. The secret to vending success, location, get more tips. Here's what you should be looking for when it comes to where you should put your vending machines. And this is where strategy becomes so important, just even in the understanding of if they have a profitable vending machine, they're going to come back and buy more vending machines. So it's in our best interest to not just show them how the machine works, but actually show them how they can make money with the machine is absolutely in our best interest at this point. We're showing them your machine setup checklist. We have our plain text check-in email from customer service. And then we have an email that is showing dynamic cross-sells in Klaviyo that's based on what they purchased. That would be for first-time customers. And then for a returning customer, we really just want to show that loyalty. Welcome back to the family. Your trust in us means the world. And if you're ready to try something new, we have these insert dynamic content specifically personalized for them. And then in terms of building the flow, it's the exact same building blocks that we talked about. All we would do for our first-time purchasers versus returning is we could set up a conditional split that just says what has someone done, placed order. Here we can say equals 1 over all time. So we know it's their first purchase. And then this branch is going to be for all of our first time purchasers. And then on the no side, we're going to know we have all of our returning customers here. And just like that, we have our post-purchase flow set up. Now the next flow is our customer win-back flow. So our customer win-back flow is going to be triggered when someone places an order. And then after a set amount of time where we believe they should have came back and purchased again, if they have not, then we try and win them back with a specific offer. So again, we're going to select placed order here because someone's going to be put into this flow whenever they've placed an order. And then the profile filter here, we're going to say placed order 0 times since starting this flow. So at any point, if they have placed an order again, then they're not going to receive the emails that we have in place. In terms of the content, we want to let them know that we missed them and we want to present a special offer. So what's important to understand here is we have to have a time delay in place that makes sense. So here's where you're going to have to do some digging on your end to figure out what the average time is between customer purchases. So this is something you can find with your Shopify data. At Dispatch, we have a specific formula for finding this. We look at the median amount of days between purchases and the average and basically find something in between. But what's important to note here is you don't want to just guess. I think Klaviyo probably sets it at like 90 days as standard. You don't want to just go with the 90 days. You want to make this personal to your customer journey. Let's just say as an example, you're selling a food and beverage product and it should technically be consumed within 30 days. Then if you know that someone has placed an order, it's going to take around 5 days for them to get it and they should be consuming it daily, then if after 45, 50 days, they haven't placed another order, we can fairly assume that they're ready to place another order. They've ran out of product, but they haven't. So we should try and win them back before they lapse for good. So in that example, we would basically set our initial time delay here to, let's say, 45 days. And then we would start building out our emails. And again, each time Klaviyo is checking that flow filter to make sure that someone has not placed another order since starting the flow. So we want to have a dynamic exclusive offer here. And we want to use language like "we miss you" and also build some urgency into the offer so that they don't feel like they have forever to use it. We want to make sure we're doing everything we can to get them to convert at this point before they lapse. You can have these be like 7-day and 5-day time delays in between these emails. You don't want to have like very short 1-day time delays because again, you don't really know if someone's consumed the product, if they're ready to order again. So longer time delays here are better, but you want to make sure that you're consistently focusing on promoting the offer. And what works really well for a lot of brands here as well is just reminding them why your brand is better than your competition and why they shouldn't go back to your competition and should keep buying from your brand. So if we use Starbucks as an example, like if I'm buying coffee from Starbucks, it's been 45 days, I should have ran out by now. If they reach out to let me know, here's why you should continue buying from Starbucks and shouldn't go back to Dunkin' or shouldn't go back to another local cafe, this is why we're better, then I'm gonna be much more likely to be in that frame of mind when I need coffee again and go back to purchase from them. And then really your final email should just focus on urgency here. This offer is going to expire. So that's it for our customer win back flow. Now, finally, we have our sunset flow. And basically the sunset flow is super important to help keep your deliverability healthy. What it's going to do is it's going to identify people who are completely unengaged, and it's going to allow you to know when these people have become unengaged so that you can suppress them and not keep sending to them. So to build out our sunset flow, the trigger that we're going to need is actually going to be a segment. So basically, whenever someone gets put into that segment, that's what's going to be what triggers the flow. So the segment we're going to need, we can call our sunset flow trigger unengaged subscribers. And basically what we're going to do here is we're going to say that someone has opened an email 0 times in the last 180 days is usually good for most brands. And then we're going to say, and they have also clicked an email 0 times in the last 180 days. And then we're going to say that they're not already suppressed, so they can still receive email marketing. So we can go ahead and create that segment. Then we can go back to flows, click on create flow, click build your own here. We're gonna write sunset flow, create manually. And then right at the bottom here, you can see added to segment. So we're gonna choose that as our trigger. And then we're going to just look for our new segment that we just built. So sunset flow trigger. We're gonna need to have profile filters here that say that someone has opened and clicked an email 0 times since starting this flow. So basically we just wanna make sure that they are continuing to stay unengaged throughout the entire flow. So we're gonna say what someone has done, and then we can say opened email 0 times since starting this flow. And then we're gonna say or here, because if they've done one of these, then they've engaged. So we're gonna say or has clicked an email 0 times since starting this flow, and click save. Now we can click save here. And now we have the basic infrastructure set up. So now if we look at the content in our sunset flow, essentially we're just gonna wanna send 3 last chance emails to see if we can re-engage this person. And basically we're just trying to figure out, can we re-engage them with a great offer before they lapse forever and we suppress them? So you wanna make sure you have a good subject line in place that is highlighting what that great offer is. And the focus on this flow is really just pushing the offer, trying to get them to open, trying to get them to click. And then in this last email, we're actually gonna let them know that we're gonna be taking them off this list unless they engage. And you can see exactly what that looked like for Gumball when we built this out for them. So we miss seeing you around. Here's an exclusive 10% discount, and it's a dynamic code that we're sending so that it can't leak. So then we're following up with that message to let them know that they can still use their code. And then finally, we're just letting them know that we noticed you've been missing out on our latest products and exclusive offers. To keep receiving updates about our fresh inventory, special discounts, and vending tips, click below. And basically what's gonna happen is if they click, we are going to know that they have engaged. And if they don't open any of these emails, they don't click any of these emails, then we're going to know that they're completely unengaged. So just to show you how this plays out, we're going to have our first email in here as soon as the sunset flow is triggered. We're gonna have a time delay in place of, let's say, 5 days, and then we can have email number 3. Now, if at the end of email number 3, they haven't engaged, what we're going to have here, we can put another 5-day time delay at the end here. We're gonna put in our profile property update, and here's where we're going to say, create a new property on this specific person's profile that says unengaged, and we're gonna select the Boolean, which just means true or false. And this is gonna mean true. So basically, by the time we get to this profile property update, Klaviyo is for the last time here going to check the flow filters. And if they have not engaged, then this update is gonna be made. Now, when this update gets made, the last part of this is we're going to create another segment that just says unengaged equals true to suppress. And now we're gonna know, based on the properties about someone, if that unengaged custom property is true, then they're gonna fall into this segment. We're also going to add in this condition that just says, and someone can still receive email marketing. So we know that we haven't suppressed these people already. So once a month, we're gonna just check in on this segment, and everyone who's gone through it and has been updated with this new property, we're just going to suppress. So the way we're going to do that, let's say I create the segment here and we come in and check in on this at the end of the month. What you're gonna be able to do is click Manage Segment, Export Segment to CSV, and then you're gonna go into Profiles over here, View Suppress Profiles, and then you can actually go ahead and just import the new CSV that we just exported and suppress these people. So the two main reasons you want to do this, or you want to make sure you have someone doing this for you, like we do for all of our clients, is that every month you're going to get billed by Klaviyo for your active profiles. So it's actually going to save you on your billing every month. And then second, it's going to save you from sending more emails to these people who are clearly identified as unengaged after going through the sunset flow, who are just going to keep hurting your deliverability if you keep sending to. All right, so now that we're done with our flows, let's talk about campaigns. I'm super excited about this because campaigns are by far my favorite part of email marketing. And I know they're also the hardest part for a lot of brands to get right. And by the end of the section, you're gonna have a perfect understanding of how to send campaigns for your brand that convert on a consistent basis. All right, so when it comes to your campaigns, what's extremely important to understand is that you need to keep a consistent cadence of campaign sends. So I want you to know that I understand how hard it is to keep a consistent cadence and send campaigns every single week. Trust me, I've been there on the brand side. Everything that can possibly come up to derail you and make this week the week that a campaign gets skipped is going to happen. But I cannot overemphasize how important it is to have a plan and a strategy and a team in place to make sure that this doesn't happen. The reason why this is so important and the reason why it will hurt your revenue is because if you go several weeks without sending a single campaign, you will fall out of mind and out of routine for your subscribers, and you will see your unsubscribe rates, your spam complaint rates rise. If you think of it from a simple level, let's say Black Friday is coming up in 3 months and you're sending one campaign a month, maybe you're taking a month off. When Black Friday comes around and you have all of these objectively amazing deals that your subscribers should care about, they're not even going to be opening your emails because they're completely unengaged with your brand at this point. So staying top of mind is absolutely the name of the game here. And number one, with good content that's getting into inboxes on a consistent, regular basis, you're going to drive revenue from every single one of those campaigns, even if there's no discount. And then number two, when you do have a really good promotion that's running, like a Black Friday sale, or you're releasing a big new product, all of these subscribers are going to be engaged and ready to shop. So it's really important to stay top of mind, and you have to choose the right cadence. So basically there's just two questions which you have to answer. The first one is how many emails should you be sending? For brands that are doing $1 to $10 million a year, and that's basically the sweet spot that's gonna balance engagement, deliverability, and ROI. So the metrics that you're going to be monitoring are click-through rates, unsubscribes, and spam complaints. So essentially, if you're currently sending 1 email per week and you start sending 4 emails per week, you're gonna wanna make sure that your click-through rates aren't decreasing dramatically. You're gonna wanna make sure that your unsubscribe rates are not increasing dramatically, and you're gonna wanna make sure that your spam complaint rates are not going up. If hypothetically, all of those metrics stay flat with that increase and you can send 4 emails per week instead of 1 and see no changes to them, then you should be sending more emails because your list is telling you that they actually want that many emails from you and they're interested in hearing from you 4 times a week, which is going to make you way more money than sending once a week. Now, the second question, which is arguably more important, is just how many emails can you send? So even if you can make way more money sending 4 emails per week, if you can't actually realistically commit to sending 4 emails a week consistently, and it's going to look more realistically like 4 emails one week and 1 email the next week, then like you shouldn't commit to sending 4 a week. So let's say 2 per week that you could actually stick to. And then when the time is right, invest resources into getting support and a team that could actually handle sending more for you with a positive ROI. Now, a lot of brands have the next question, which is what should we be sending? What actual content in our campaigns should we send? I have no idea what I should send. So I'm here to answer that for you. The short answer is that you should basically send whatever your subscribers want to be receiving from you. A lot of brands just make a subjective decision around this is the content that we send. We only send emails when we have a new product out. We only send emails when there's a promotion. We only send emails about recipes, let's say. But the truth of the matter is, this is where testing different types of content is a super high leverage activity. So I can tell you at Dispatch, like at our agency, our priority is simply driving incremental revenue through strategic calendars. Like we do everything across pop-up forms, flows, and campaigns, but on an ongoing basis, the incremental revenue that we're driving every single month for our partners is by far the highest value that we provide. So with that being our priority and our focus, what I can tell you is we have a ton of data on what campaigns are actually worth sending. And these are basically the types of campaigns that 99% of brands watching this should be sending. So the first campaign type that converts extremely well are either product or collection spotlights. So essentially a product spotlight is picking one product from your catalog and going deep on all of the unique reasons why this product is better than competitive products in the market, what goes into it in terms of the materials, the ingredients, whatever customers would care about, and really just putting the spotlight on all of these small details that might even be on the product page, but that a lot of customers just might not notice and might not pay attention to. And I know for a fact that a lot of brands watching this might think that some of their products like aren't bestsellers and people don't want them, but if they sent a campaign that was actually framed in the right light around why someone should care about this product and why it is the best product in the market, in a lot of cases, the results would shock them. So that's a product spotlight. And then a collection spotlight is basically a similar idea in which you're taking a collection of products that are built on either a theme or just a collection that you have in Shopify and putting the spotlight on that. So this is an example from Lounge, and essentially you can see like the collection that they're showcasing is head to toe neutrals. So on their website, like all these products might be in like a tops or bottoms collection. So it's not necessarily showcasing like your tops collection or your bottoms collection. It's picking a theme and a common thread to tie several products together and then putting a spotlight on that to highlight why people should go shop. The next type of campaign that converts extremely well for 99% of brands are benefit-focused emails, is essentially when you pull out one benefit that your product offers and you put the spotlight on that and showcase why customers should care about that benefit and what's in it for them. So in this example from Brondell, you can see that they're talking about over 1 billion gallons saved. So there's a lot of reasons why someone might want to buy a shower head from this brand, but they're simply putting a focus on how much water savings come from using their products. So the truth is, for a lot of brands, there's like a bunch of different reasons why someone might want to buy your product. And most of the brands just like talk about all of them all at once, or just talk about not enough of them. But in reality, if one type of customer that you have on your list is going to overwhelmingly care about this one angle that is saving water, then specifically speaking to that as the reason they should purchase, instead of just it being one of 10 things that are listed, like having one dedicated email specifically speaking to that can drive a huge outsized number of conversions. So the general idea here is like taking one bullet point on your product page and turning it into a full email. Another campaign type that works really well for certain brands is content spotlight emails. So if you're posting content in the form of blog posts on your website, if you're posting great content that's engaging on Instagram or TikTok, then there's a huge opportunity to either reformat that content into an email format or simply just use email to push subscribers who probably haven't seen that on your other channels to have them further engage with the brand. And what's great about email is you can use the first section of that email to push out towards that content, and the second part of that email to basically say, by the way, we have this product for sale that you can go shop right now that we talked about in this content. So I love this example from Ready Set Food, one of our clients, where we basically noticed that they had a great blog post on their website that was about learning to spot the signs of food allergies. So we decided to put the spotlight on that blog post and basically just offer a teaser on what is in it and then have a CTA that links out to the blog post. And Ready Set Food as a brand sells allergen introduction products. So basically, like, first off, parents are going to want to learn the signs to understand if their kid's having an allergic reaction. And then second, when we can then just follow that up with by the way, if you don't want your child to develop allergies in the first place, guess what? We have a solution for that. Go shop. At Dispatch, we basically just call this tying in product and merchandising into all of our campaigns and evergreen content. And this converts extremely well across the board. So in the Ready Set Food example, you could see where we're kind of teasing the blog content and then linking out to it. So that's one example of how you could use this type of campaign. The next type of campaigns are education spotlight emails. So basically, if your product offers specific benefits, it has specific ingredients in it that could really use like more education about the benefit or the problem or about the specific ingredient to really engage your subscribers and get them to understand why they should care about this thing, then it can be a great content tool to actually drive a lot of conversions. So basically in this example right here from Evan Healy, then what we see here is they're purely educating on argan oil. So essentially they sell argan oil, but instead of just saying, here's the benefits of argan oil, they're going out of their way to explain everything you need to know about argan oil, which basically just plants the seeds for you to start understanding and connecting the dots around why this product will solve your problems. Another example from Tushy here. So 3 reasons wet wipes are not your friend. And they're basically just going into detail and educating a subscriber on why wet wipes are not the product that they should be using. So instead of just saying like, here's what's great about our product, they're actually educating on something that is generally relevant and interesting to this subscriber that can then allow them to connect the dots to say, oh, actually, I'll buy from Tushy instead. Another campaign type is weekly newsletters. So this can be done through either like creation or curation. And basically you can just send this out once a week and let your subscribers know like what's going on at the brand, anything that's going on in your industry that you find interesting, you can share with them. So if you are a brand that's tight on time, this like curation element can actually be really, really useful for you. It can be something as silly as like sending memes to them or like sending a Spotify playlist of the month. There's just like no filter or limit on what you can send out. And it's a really good tool to just build engagement and become a brand that people actually get excited to hear from. All right, so now we get to cultural event campaigns. So cultural event campaigns convert really well because they're going to tie in your product and your brand to things that are going on culturally that everyone's aware of. So examples of this are like Mother's Day, Father's Day, Black Friday sales, like anything that is currently culturally relevant and top of mind for people that you can tie in your brand to and basically explain why someone should want to buy for that reason. So this is a great example from Absolute, who ran a Mother's Day campaign where they're basically saying, serve one up for the moms who are selfless. So Mother's Day is obviously top of mind for everyone, end of April, beginning of May. And if your mom is someone who drinks Absolute, then them getting into your inbox with this message and then underneath a basically direct CTA to go shop and go buy is a really high converting campaign. Another example here around the holiday season from Rebel Rabbit, which is a seltzer brand, basically saying survive the holiday hustle and just finding a way to tie their product into something that is top of mind for everyone. The next campaign types are promotional emails. So there's 4 types of promotional emails that you should be sending. You should be sending promotion teaser emails. So basically a great strategy that you can run for promotions is basically sending an email before the sale starts, letting your email subscribers know that SMS subscribers get early access. Or if you're not doing SMS marketing yet, you can just simply let them know that a sale is coming to get them prepared and ready to shop. Then you're going to want to have promotion launch campaigns. So when your promotions do go live, you're going to want to let your subscribers know as soon as the promotion is live. The best promo launch campaigns are usually super concise and to the point. And basically what you're trying to do here is sell the click instead of really sell the product. So here's a great example from Moment where they're literally just letting you know up to 60% off site wide, shop Black Friday deals. And basically if we look at the rest of the kind of evergreen content campaigns that we just looked at, all of those campaigns are doing the job to engage your subscribers, sell them on the brand benefits. So when you do have a promotion and a great opportunity for your subscribers to want to go shop, we just want to get them to the website as efficiently as possible to go there and shop. Next up, we have promotion last chance campaigns. So if you're running a sale that's lasting multiple days, then on the last day of the sale, sending a last chance email to just drive some urgency around why subscribers should go shop now works really well to drive conversions. And then there's also promotion reminders. So basically, let's say you're running month-long sale that's like 20% off a certain collection. Then throughout the month, you definitely should be reminding your subscribers of that sale that's ongoing and not just saying like the sale is live at the beginning of the month and then last chance to shop at the end. You're going to drive way more conversions if you're reminding them throughout that month. So here's an example from, again, one of our clients, Ready Set Food, where we are sending evergreen content content campaigns throughout the month. But then at the bottom, we are including a module to just remind them, don't miss out, the complete system plans are currently 60% off, just to make sure we're getting those additional touch points in. And finally, the last campaign type that's going to be relevant to 99% of brands are new product launch announcements. So these are going to be some of your highest revenue generating campaigns, I guarantee it. And you want to be sending at least one email the morning of your launch to generate excitement, direct subscribers to learn more or purchase the product. And you want to just focus on clear, concise messaging that really highlights the new product benefits. So instead of just saying, hey, we released a new product, go shop, make sure that you're educating on what the product is and why it's specifically going to benefit your subscribers. Basically, just ask yourself the question why they should care. And the mistake that so many brands make is they'll have all of this information potentially on the product page, maybe even on the product packaging, but they just don't feel the need to express it in their email marketing. And that's where opportunity just gets missed, where if you're not directly informing people of these benefits, they're not going to understand the need to actually go click out to the site to learn more in the first place. So here's a great example from Moment where they're letting you know that they're introducing this still reishi orange made for mornings. And then they're basically just letting you know that you should say hello to your new morning routine, freshly squeezed oranges, etc. And just really clearly pointing you to the benefits of what's in it for you. So here's why you should care that there's orange in it and how it's going to help you. It's going to help you fight stress, boost your mood, enhance your focus. Limited stock available. Don't miss out. Try it now. So this is a really good example of a new product launch announcement. All right, now in terms of how you should technically be sending your campaigns in Klaviyo, here's what this is going to look like. You're going to go ahead and navigate to the campaigns tab in Klaviyo right here. And then basically you're going to see a dashboard that looks like this with your past campaigns. And you're going to be able to create your campaigns from this view. So what you're going to do is you're going to click on create campaign. You're going to put in the campaign name. So we can call this new product launch. You're going to set the date that this campaign is going to be sent. So we could set this to July 9th. We're going to set the type to email right here. And then if you want, you can use campaign tags. So we could use a tag that says new product launch. And tags are going to be really useful to help you analyze your data, which we'll look at afterwards. So you can go ahead and click continue. And then here is where we're going to choose the audience. So this is basically where we're saying who we want to send the campaign to. And here's where we're going to use our segments that we created earlier for our campaign sending. So you're going to see that when we click send to, you can either send to your lists or your segments. Like we talked about before, you only want to use segments and specifically engaged segments for your campaign sending. So what I'm going to do is click on our prospects engaged 90-day segment over here. Then what you're going to have is the option to choose who not to send to. So because this is a new product launch campaign, maybe we just don't want to send to anyone who has recently purchased a product in the same category within the last 3 days, as an example. What we could do is basically go ahead and create that segment exactly like I showed you how to do before, and then include that in this don't send to segment over here. Then you have the ability to turn on smart sending for this campaign specifically or not. So earlier in this video, we set our smart send limitations within our settings at the account level, but then actually for each individual campaign, you can choose if you want to kind of override that and not turn smart sending on. So your thinking here should basically be like, let's say someone received an abandoned cart email or a welcome series email within the last 16 hours. Do we want to let them know about this new product launch, or do we think that's going to be annoying and cause them to unsubscribe? Normally, if it's a big new product launch, that person's probably going to be interested in it. So this is a good opportunity to turn smart sending off. Then finally, when it comes to tracking, you should definitely be including your UTM parameters, and then we can just go ahead and click next over here. Here in our templates, you can either have save templates, which is basically going to be templates that you've used in the past, or you can go to the email library and basically choose one of the Klaviyo templates that you can then go and edit just like we did before, or you can basically just start from scratch over here. Typically what you're going to want to do if you're building your emails outside of Klaviyo in Figma is basically just click create new, and then you're just going to drag in your image slices over here and add them one by one until the email is built. All right, so once we have our creative in place, what we're going to do here is basically just put in the subject line and the preview text of the email. So the subject line, we want to make sure this is engaging. So what we can do is say something like, it's finally here, ... And we want this to be intriguing so that when someone sees it in their inbox, they're likely to open. Then we have our preview text line, which is basically just going to live right under the subject line in the inbox. And it's just one more element to get someone interested in opening the email. So what we can say here for our new product launch is something like the product that everyone's been been asking for. Great. So what we're going to do now is click on next, Klaviyo's new campaign sequence builder, where you're going to be able to see all the details in finalizing your campaign. And you're also going to be able to add a follow-up email if you want to. So if we're announcing this new product, we want to make sure that as many of our subscribers as possible are actually seeing this email. And the truth is there are just going to be a lot of people who are not going to check their inbox in the time frame that we send this first email. So Klaviyo now allows you with one click to toggle on this setting and add a follow-up email. And what this is going to do is just resend it to anyone who didn't open the first email. What we're going to have to do is just create a new subject line. So if someone didn't open the first email because the subject line didn't engage them, we want to try something else. So let's say we're selling t-shirts. We could say brand new t-shirts just in time for summer. Then Klaviyo also lets you choose who you want to resend this to. So let's say we were sending to a 90-day engaged segment for our first send. We can then just send to anyone who's been engaged in the last 30 days for our resend to just avoid sending too many emails to people who aren't engaged outside of that time frame. And then finally, you're gonna have to set your time delay. So Klaviyo doesn't let you set a time delay under 48 hours. And this is okay for campaigns like a new product launch when there's nothing that's super time sensitive, but there are scenarios where you absolutely will want to resend your campaigns in a shorter time window. So essentially, if you think of Black Friday as an example, during Black Friday, all of your competitors are sending several emails, which means your subscribers' inboxes are going to be flooded, and you want to make sure that you are giving yourself the best chance to actually get your emails seen by your subscribers. So what that means is you can actually do 2 or 3 resends of the same campaign on Black Friday in order to get someone to open and click and purchase. And if you're doing that, then this setting won't work. You're going to have to do those resends manually by just cloning your campaign and resending it. Finally, here we just have a recap of all of our settings. So Klaviyo will give you a warning of anything if necessary. Essentially, we're going to be able to see our estimated recipients, which is just going to be the sum of the segments that we're choosing to send to and the segments that we're choosing to exclude. We're going to have our smart sending settings. So Klaviyo is just letting us know here we disabled it for this campaign, but we meant to, so that's fine. And then they're just going to give a preview of all of the other details. So our subject line, preview text, content, the from and reply addresses, and then they're just confirming that we have an unsubscribe link in our email, which is required for compliance. And finally, they're just confirming that we have tracking in place. So this is where you should just take 10 seconds, make sure that everything looks right based on the details that you wanted to have included in this campaign. And once you're set, what we can do is click schedule or send, and we can go ahead and schedule this campaign at the date and time that we want to. And here's where you can either choose to send. So let's say we want to send this July 9th at 9 a.m. when the product is going live on Shopify. What we can do is say it's going live at 9 a.m. Eastern. Maybe we want to send this email at 9 a.m. Eastern. But what you can also do and what you'll see in your settings is the ability to send based on recipient's local time zone. And then finally, you're going to see this to determine recipients at send time or not. And basically what's important to understand here is if you have certain segments that are going to dynamically update, and it's important to either include or exclude people at the exact time this campaign is sent, you're going to want to make sure that this is toggled. So a good example here is if we want to make sure we're excluding anyone who's purchased in the last 3 days, then if we schedule it now and this isn't checked, it's going to basically choose who's purchased in the last 3 days as of today. But we don't want that. We want it to check who's purchased in the last 3 days at the time of sending. And that's what's going to happen if we check this checkbox. And once that's done, you can click schedule campaign and you're all set. So now that we talked about the types of emails you can send and how to send them in terms of your campaigns and your automated flows, I want to talk about what is going to be inside of those emails. And that's going to be the copywriting and the design of your emails. So I've briefly touched on this throughout the video already, but let's go into some more depth so that you really understand how to write emails and how to design emails in order to make sure they're driving clicks and they're driving conversions. Now, I want you to pay attention because this is one of the most important things that I'm going to say in this entire course. And that is what you are saying matters 10 times more than how you are saying it. So essentially what this comes down to is understanding that the overarching message and the offer and the call to action that you have in your email is what's going to drive conversions ultimately. You could have the prettiest email in the world with the best copywriting in the world, but if you have an offer that doesn't resonate with people or you're promoting products that don't resonate with people, then it's not going to convert. Like just to give you a ridiculous example so that you understand understand the point. If it's Mother's Day and we're promoting men's items, like that is not going to convert. So you could have the most beautiful email with our best-selling men's products, but that's not going to resonate with someone who's shopping for gifts for Mother's Day. That's obviously an example at the end of the spectrum of something that most brands obviously would not do. But if you get more granular with it, those details and those decisions around what you're going to talk about in the email and your merchandising and your offers are ultimately what is going to drive conversions. So with all of that said, there's a ton of brands that I've audited and worked with, especially on the smaller end of the spectrum, that are overly focused on the creative. They're overly focused on making sure that their email designs and the copywriting is perfect. And I am here to tell you that that is not worth spending your time harping on. The highest ROI activity is going to be figuring out what to send and what your subscribers care about and what's driving conversions. It's not going to be about making sure that every pixel is perfect. With that said, let's talk about what actually matters when it comes to copywriting and design to drive conversions. So when it comes to copywriting, the first most important thing is to know your audience. So you want to make sure that you're writing for your specific customer demographic and not trying to be everything to everybody. So when you get really clear on who you are as a brand, your tone of voice, and who your customer is, you're going to see more conversions when you speak directly to them. So let's say you know that your audience is millennial women. Speak to millennial women in the language that they use and speak to them about the content that they care about. And following up on that, we want to make sure that we're focusing on the benefits that are specifically important to your audience. And we're not just talking about the product details. So let's say we're selling coffee as an example. We don't just want to say we have the best coffee beans, we have beans that are grown in Ethiopia that are so amazing. We want to talk about what is in it for them. So if you're a millennial woman and you have kids, then we might want to speak to the fact that our coffee is going to give you more energy to get through the day and get everything you need to do done than any other coffee on the market. And if you compare that to another coffee brand that has a Gen Z male audience, like we might want to speak to the fact that our coffee is going to give them extra productivity for late nights at work or extra energy when they're playing sports, like whatever it is we know about our customer demographic and what they're interested in and the specific benefits that our products provide to them that help solve their problems. That's what we want to focus on. Next up, what's super important is being clear and concise. So number one, you want to have one core message per email. One of the biggest problems that a lot of brands make in their copywriting is they try and focus on like 10 different things in their email. So in a welcome email, let's say, like they'll talk about here's our best sellers, here's our FAQs, here's a note from our founder, here's why you're going to love our products. And each of those messages individually might be great, but the fact of the matter is that over the last few years, people have much shorter attention spans and we need to be more concise and focused in what we're telling people. So from your subject line to your preview text to the content of your email, we literally just want to focus on one, maximum two overarching themes and content and messages. And then once we have one core message in our email, we want to cut out as much fluff in our copy as possible. So what that means is just avoiding unnecessary words. You want to avoid paragraphs when you can. Like anytime there's a way to communicate the message you're trying to communicate with icons or other visual design language and not have your content in paragraph form, that's absolutely ideal for most customer demos who would much prefer to consume content that way much quicker than read an entire paragraph, or even more likely see an entire paragraph, decide they don't have time to read it, and then move on. You need to make sure you have a strong brand voice. So basically, if you're watching this and you feel like you don't have a really strong brand voice that you're confident in, that you know who you are as a brand, who you are in the market, you want to make sure that you're getting really clear on that and that you are always being consistent and sticking to that brand voice. So if you're talking to millennials, you're always talking to millennials and you're talking to millennials from a specific perspective that you understand them. Next up, you want to make sure that you're writing copy that is helping you sell the click. So essentially the main goal of your email is typically going to be to get someone from your email to your website in order to shop. If you can't get them to your website, they cannot shop and they cannot buy. So when you focus on writing your copy, not to necessarily sell your product, but to sell the click that's going to get someone out to the product page to go shop, you're going to see more clicks and you're going to see more conversions. And I just noted here that this is especially effective for promotions or new product launches where other campaigns have already done the job of educating, which we talked about. And in those moments when you have something that people really are interested in, you just want to get them to the site. Next up is using proven persuasion techniques. techniques. So you want to make sure that you are actually doing everything you can in your copywriting to persuade someone to want to purchase from you. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can do this, but the most common ways, the most effective ways are by using urgency and scarcity. So anytime you can say that a deal ends tonight, anytime that you can say that something is in limited quantity, you're going to see more conversion because people are automatically going to be more interested and feel more urgency to take action now. Next up, any opportunity you have to use social proof, which is going to be like showing customer reviews or user generated content, or maybe even testimonials from influencers, anything that's coming from like the press, anything that's coming from a voice other than you as the brand that is going to provide proof that your brand is helping other people, is going to significantly increase the trust that your subscribers have in what you're trying to communicate. Then we have curiosity gaps. So basically any time that you can kind of tease something. So I showed this before, but like in a content focused email where you might have a blog post that you're trying to promote, instead of just showing the entire blog, if you can just tease what the blog is about and basically get them to want to click on, read more, that's going to be really advantageous for you to drive clicks out. When it comes to your subject lines and preview text, a lot of brands really overthink their subject lines and their preview text. It's not the most important part of email marketing, I promise you that, but there are some important things to understand. So you should keep both your subject line and preview text under 50 characters and always front load the value there. So let's say you're running a site-wide sale for summer. You don't want your subject line to be something like summer's finally here, shop 50% off site-wide. You want it to be 50% off site-wide, and then in your preview text, you can say something like summer's finally here, shop now. Ultimately, you want to make sure that if someone is only reading the first 3 words, they're getting the full understanding of what the value is for them in the email. And then basically when it comes to your preview text, just complement the subject line with any additional details or anything that's going to add curiosity to get someone to want to open that email. Last, but certainly not least here, is always add value. Either educate, entertain, or solve a problem. Before you hit schedule or send on a campaign or set a flow email live, always just think about, why is my subscriber going to care about this? Are they actually going to care about what's in this email? Are they going to be happy that they opened this email after they opened it? And if the answer to that is no, or I'm not 100% sure, then what that means is that there's just not enough value in there for that subscriber. And you should go back to the drawing board to rewrite your copy to make sure that it is either educating them, entertaining them, or solving a problem for them super clearly. So now let's talk about email design and how to specifically design emails that are going to drive conversions and what really matters in email design. So I said it before, I'll say it again, it's so important. Design your emails in Figma, not Klaviyo. This is going to result in emails that are on brand and look a lot better, which is going to lead to more clicks and more conversions. And I want to show you a very real example of why this matters right now. So I just pulled up my personal email promotions tab, and I just want to show you the exact difference between emails that are designed in Klaviyo and emails that are designed in Figma. So right now it's the beginning of July, which means there are a lot of brands doing July 4th sales. And I just want to show you the difference in what I'm experiencing and what you're probably experiencing when you're looking at these different campaigns. The first one we have is from Regent Row, and I just want you to look at what you feel and what you see immediately when you look at this campaign. Here's example number 1 of a campaign that was designed in Klaviyo. The next email we have here is from a spa. This is an email that's designed using Klaviyo, and ignore the French, but just look at what you feel and what you notice when you're looking at this email. Now, our third and last example here is from Rue Porter, a company that sells apparel, and basically this is their July 4th weekend sale email. Now, I want you to compare and contrast these 3 emails designed in Klaviyo with 3 emails that we designed for our clients over the last month. So the first one is for Felt Right, and I want you to just look at this in comparison to what you just saw. This was a sale announcement email for their summer sale. Contrast this sale announcement email with this one, or this one, or this one. The difference is just very clearly striking because you immediately understand what we need you to understand, which is what the offer is, how to redeem it, and a clear call to action to go and shop with that offer. Compared to an email like this, where the first thing I'm seeing is a bunch of icons with USPs, a paragraph, and a few product images. Then I'm seeing another paragraph with a bunch of details here. And then I'm just seeing like copy that isn't even using this brand's brand font with some more details and a huge CTA button here with another link right here. If you had to guess which email is going to get people to click out and shop at a higher rate, they're not even comparable. And if we scroll down our email for Felt Right, this is where you're gonna be able to see that what matters in this design is that we are clearly communicating the products that we are choosing to merchandise here and why someone should wanna go shop them. So right away, you can see the summer's customer favorites, Shaded Mountain as the felt panels that someone would wanna buy because they're top rated. You can see the Shape Play Heat Wave, that's a staff favorite, and you can go shop that right now. You can get the wall slats that are a sophisticated choice, etc. And then we have our USPs at the bottom if anyone just has any hesitations on free shipping, on where the product's made, etc. The next email is from our client Young Nails, who we've been working with for close to 3 years now. And again, the difference in the visual impact that this has as soon as you open the email is just extremely striking when you compare it to the 3 emails that we previously looked at. So ultimately, what I want you to understand is that this design that you are seeing right now is just simply not achievable inside of Klaviyo. So if you want to achieve the same impact and ultimately the same results, you're going to have to design your emails in Figma. And then the third and final example here, just the icing on the cake, is from one of our longtime clients who has several acupuncture spaces in New York. So we drive bookings for them. And essentially, again, you can see the clear distinction in what the visual looks like, what it's communicating, and how easily it is to connect the dots between what we're talking about, what's in it for the subscriber, and how they can take action to go book extremely efficiently. Yes, the design quality, the visuals are obviously much stronger and much better in the emails that we designed compared to the Klaviyo emails that I just showed you. But ultimately, the reason why those emails are going to drive so many more conversions compared to an email designed in Klaviyo is because of 2 things. Number 1, the structure and the layout. And number 2, the visual elements inside. So when it comes to structure and layout, what you want to make sure you're doing is creating a very scannable layout with enough white space for someone to be able to just scan and not be overwhelmed with clutter. What I mean by scannable is they open the email, they can see really clearly that there's a 15% off site-wide sale. They can see the CTA to go shop it. Then if they scroll down, they can see what this summer's customer favorites are. They can see the USPs. That's it. Compare that to an email like this that I open, and I can't understand the different things that they're trying to communicate as I'm scrolling down unless I'm reading every single word. So what makes an email really scannable is really clear headers and subheaders, enough white space that allows the distinct content and messages that we're talking about to live on their own as different sections. And then even within each section, just enough space to not have everything cluttered within each other. So one of the top performing hierarchies that any brand can follow is having a header, a subheader, body copy if necessary, an image, and a CTA, and having that in that order. So what we can see here is a header, a subheader, some body copy, a clear CTA, and in this situation, we have our image in the background with the text overlaid, but the format still follows. Another example, we have our header, subheader, body copy, CTA, and an image just like this. And what's important is that if you have an email that has multiple sections like this one, you want to follow a format that's similar to that in each section with a clear header, then body copy, then an image, or something along those lines in each different section. You can actually think of this as a visual funnel within the email itself to get someone to the bottom of the funnel where they're going to click out, where the top of the funnel is just to get someone's interest and understanding and awareness. So the header makes them aware that they can join for Young Nails rewards. The body copy here is our middle of funnel, which is just giving some more education and creating more interest. And then our bottom of funnel is where we're actually going for the ask and giving them the CTA to go sign up. So that's what makes a really strong layout and high performance structure of a good conversion design e-commerce email. Now, when you look at the visual elements, you're gonna wanna make sure that you're placing CTAs near products, basically on single lines. So you can see here, if we look at this region row example again, there's no direct CTAs to go shop these individual products. So if something does catch my eye and I wanna go out to this product, when I click on this image, it might take me to the product page, but that's not necessarily the most intuitive, and a lot of brands don't even do that. Whereas if you look at this email from our client Felt Right, you can see that under each product that we're promoting, if something does catch their eye and they want the wood wall slots or they want the seaside jacaranda, then they can go shop that right away with a clear CTA. Next up, you wanna make sure you're using icons instead of bullet points whenever you can. So a bullet point format is a good format to present a message, but look at what is achieved here with bullet points compared to our email from Young Nails, where we're letting people know they can collect points by signing up, placing orders, celebrating your birthday. Having these simple check icons in place that simply visually reinforce what is happening is simply much more engaging than simple bullet points. Next up, you want to make sure that anytime you're running a promotion or a sale, that the way to redeem it, so the promo code, is extremely clear. So if we compare this email, which is a sale for 25% off, and if I read clearly, I can see that the code is July 4th. Like, this is easy to miss if I just see 25% off July 4th weekend in the subject line, open the email. The first thing I see that really stands out is shop now. If I click on this right away, I'm gonna miss that I even need the code July 4th. So if you compare that to this email from Feltright, where we're just making it super clear right before the CTA in bold that they need to use the code SUMMER15 in checkout. Of course, we're gonna see more conversion when someone gets to checkout and actually knows that they have to use a code and what that code is. Now, this last one is very important as well. So we need to make sure that we're only including really high resolution, relevant imagery. So when I talk about relevant imagery, I basically mean, like, if you're talking about a specific product, don't put an image next to it that's of a different product. If you are sending an email about men's clothing, maybe don't feature a woman in the hero image of the email. And then unfortunately, a lot of brands don't use high quality visuals. Their images in their emails are like blurry. And of course, that's just not gonna drive the same desire in a product than a really crisp, high quality visual. Pretty often I speak to brands who just think that their branding doesn't lend themselves to beautiful email design like the ones I just showed you. So it's actually for that specific reason we put together this file from working with over 30 clients at Dispatch over the last few years to just show that amazing email design can be achieved with any brand guidelines. So if you have bold branding, this is what your emails could look like. If you have more natural branding, this is what we've designed for clients that fit the bill in that area. If you have more luxe premium branding, these are emails that we've designed for Kin Euphorics, co-founded by Bella Hadid, Aura, that I just showed you in the inbox, Feltright, Nekohama, a premium matcha brand, Craig Hill, an amazing product brand. If you have more playful branding, these are emails that we've designed for Young Nails, Privileged Shoes, Cloud 10 Beauty, Gumball, the pet brand Coyote, and the dance bag brand Rack and Roll. And then if your brand does really lean into more educational content, this is just a great example of what really great engaging educational emails can look like compared to sending really paragraph heavy emails that are just on a blank white space. So these are emails that we've designed for our clients: AeroPress, True Diagnostic, Outwork Nutrition, Jasper, Milky Mama, and Ease Cushion that do an amazing job at just really educating people in a super engaging way where we've seen click-through rates absolutely skyrocket. So now that you know how to send campaigns, set up your automated flows, write your copy, handle your design, and get everything done inside of Klaviyo to actually get emails into your subscribers' inboxes, now let's talk about how to understand if your emails are actually performing well or not. So first and foremost, it's extremely important to monitor your analytics inside of Klaviyo every single month. The reason why you need to monitor your analytics every month is, number one, you want to ensure that nothing is broken. So I've seen so many instances where a brand will update their Shopify theme, for example, and their pop-up form will actually stop showing up. I see examples every single month of abandoning cart flows just stop sending because of technical issues, and a ton of other issues that could easily be caught if the analytics are being paid attention to month over month and looking at those changes, but just go unnoticed when no one's paying attention. And this can literally cause tens of thousands of dollars in revenue to slip through the cracks. So that's the number one reason you need to be monitoring your analytics every month. But the second reason, which is equally important, is you need to keep up with what your subscribers actually care about and what's driving conversions in order to double down on what's working every single month and cut out what's not working. Something I see all the time with brands that aren't paying attention to their campaign analytics, for example, is they'll send a campaign for a specific collection that drives a really low click-through rate, which means there's very little engagement and drives almost no revenue. And yet, because they're not paying attention to see how that campaign did, they're gonna plan another campaign for that collection the next month instead of sending another campaign for a collection that their subscribers actually do want to purchase from. And of course, if you're just paying attention to what is working and doing more of that, the revenue that's going to come as a result of that compounds really quickly over the course of a couple of months, and then especially over the course of years. And then finally, you want to make sure that you're running high leverage A/B tests every single month. At the end of the day, if you're not running tests, you're really just guessing about what your subscribers care about and what's going to drive incremental conversions. The only way to really be sure about what's going to drive additional conversions for you is to run A/B tests. So let's go ahead and start with list growth. So we want to make sure that our list is growing every single month. All right, so there's a few places where you can monitor your list growth. I'm gonna show you the easiest place to look at this. So you're gonna go over to your profiles over here, and you're gonna click on view subscriber growth. And you're going to click on 30 days, so you should be doing this once a month. So at a high level, what you wanna understand is your list growing every month? And if the answer is yes, we wanna know why, what's causing that growth. And if the answer is no, we wanna know, okay, why is the list not growing? What's causing that decline? So Klaviyo makes it super simple to basically see your total email subscribers and the growth that's happening month over month. So we can see period over period. In this example, we now have 16,000 email subscribers, and that's up 0.1% compared to the previous month. And we can see that in the last 30 days, we gained 226 new subscribers and we lost 208 subscribers. So we can see that the amount of new subscribers was down 27% month over month. And the amount of subscribers we lost is down 4.6%, which is good because we've lost less subscribers than the previous month. So you can see the day by day chart over here where it's telling us how many new email subscribers versus removed email subscribers happen on each given day. And then what we're going to do is click into opt-in sources over here. And in opt-in sources, we're going to be able to see where our email subscribers came from in the last 30 days and what the trend was for each of these sources. So the two main sources of new subscribers that brands are going to have that are on Klaviyo are coming from Shopify checkout when people place an order and sign up for email, or when people sign up through your pop-up forms. So in this example, we can see that in the last 30 days, there were 116 people that came from Shopify checkout, and that's down 27% month over month. We want to make sure that the integration is actually not broken. So I've seen it happen before that there can be a huge drop in subscribers coming from Shopify checkout, and we want to make sure that that's not what happened in the last 30 days. I can definitely tell you that if your site traffic was down in proportion to the trends that we're seeing here, so for this brand, if they saw total purchases, total checkout started down 27% month over month, then of course it makes sense that the amount of new email subscribers coming from checkout is going to be down 27%. So really the only cause for concern should come when there is a big gap between what you're seeing on the Shopify side in terms of amount of purchases and amount of checkouts and the subscribers that you're seeing coming in from checkout over here. The next thing that we have here is our pop-up form. So if you have multiple pop-up forms set up, then you would see each separate pop-up form over here. And here's where we can see that there were also 116 new subscribers gained from our pop-up. That's down 27%. So the amount of subscribers that you're gaining from your pop-up form is simply a function of the amount of site traffic that you have and the viewers that are seeing it, and then the conversion rate of your form. So what we would want to do if we see that it's down 27%, which of course is not ideal, we would want to just click into the form right here. And then if we go to the last 30 days over here, what we're going to be able to see if we look at the week by week, we're going to see that there were 8,000 views on the form and there were 190 form submissions, or a 2.28% submit rate. So if we go ahead and look at the prior month, which is going to be May 6 to June 6, what we're going to see is that in the prior month, there were 10,000 views compared to 8.3 thousand, which is roughly a 20% drop in form views. And what we want to make sure of is that the form submit rate has not dropped dramatically. So in the last 30 days, it was 2.28%, and in the 30 days prior, it was 2.19%. Our form submit rate actually went up in the last 30 days. And ultimately, that's what we can control in Klaviyo. So the amount of site traffic that you're getting is going to be influenced by the amount of paid ads that you have, how your organic content is performing. And what we can control in Klaviyo is how our pop-up form is performing and the A/B test that we're running on it to try and improve it. So in this situation, we can basically understand really quickly the amount of new subscribers dropped because there was a drop in traffic, not because there was a drop in performance from our sign-up forms. And that is completely understandable and no cause for concern. So we can check that off the list. And the last thing that we want to take a look at is your A/B test results. So like I said, you have to be running an A/B test every single month, and we want to take a look at the results of that. If you need to manually end the test, you would want to do that once a month and basically take the highest converting one. So in our last test that we ran for this client, what we can see is that we went from a 3.11% submit rate to a 4.29%. And we can see that the winner was automatically chosen by Klaviyo after 32 days. So nothing to do here. All we have to do is set up our new test for the next month, and we can go ahead and check this off. So next we get into our campaigns. Like I said, it's really important to look at your campaign performance over the last month to understand what's driving conversions, what isn't, what's driving engagement, what's not, in order to double down on what's working and cut what's not. So I'm going to change our status to sent here. We can look at the last 30 days. And the first thing that I'm going to do is just sort this by revenue. We want to make sure that's what we are looking at, because ultimately the metric that we care most about is revenue. And we want to look at what campaigns are driving the most revenue. So what we can see at a glance is that in June, our top performing campaign drove $2,000 in revenue for this client. And this campaign was focused on restaurant quality recipes to try this Father's Day with a focus on barbecue products. So this is an example of a cultural holiday campaign that we sent for this brand. And we can now understand right away that tying in cultural moments for this brand specifically is a high high lever for driving additional revenue and is one of the better campaign types that we can run. So of course, we're going to want to test another cultural tie-in next month and see if this trend continues. And as long as it is, what we can do is just add in more cultural tie-ins to ensure we're driving more revenue, because that's what the data is showing that subscribers care about and resonate with, and is getting them to go to the website and purchase product. The second highest performing campaign was our benefits of cooking at home. So this is a content focused email, an educational focused email, where we're basically just describing why home cooking matters and how to make it delicious. So we can now use this data to clearly inform that this is something that our subscribers for this client care about. They care about cooking at home and the benefits of it. And now we can find other content ideas for next month that either double down on this specific angle of helping them cook at home, or we can try out another benefit focused campaign that's focused on a different benefit that the brand offers that might not be cooking at home, to see if that angle also resonates and if we should really continue to send these benefit focused campaigns. Other metrics that we want to pay attention to are click-through rate, to just understand what's driving engagement. And here's where we can absolutely see that there is a stark difference in the amount of engagement and interest that was driven by this benefits of cooking at home email compared to this Father's Day email. The way to just understand these three columns here at a glance is your open rates are telling you how much interest there was in the subject line, how good your targeting was in terms of your segmentation, the timing that you sent the email at. Then your click rate is showing you the amount of interest in the content and the offers. So the click rate is the exact specific metric that you want to be using to judge, do people care about this content or this offer or this product that I sent my campaign for? And then your placed order metric is going to be used to help you understand what actually got people to go out and press that complete purchase button. What really made them interested to buy? So when we look at our top two performers here, this is a really good example of the stark contrast in these numbers that we see pretty often, which is this benefits of cooking at home campaign drove way more interest. This, in terms of the content of the email and what we were talking about, was more engaging and drove more interest for these subscribers. But because Father's Day is just naturally a bigger revenue driving moment where people are looking to spend money to buy gifts, then it makes sense that even though we drove less than half the amount of clicks on this campaign, we drove more revenue because the offer and how we were positioning the products in this campaign lended itself to why people actually wanted to buy. So in terms of speaking about how to make home cooking delicious, that is going to get more interest and it's going to get more people to click out, because the reason why they should buy isn't as strong as pushing them to gift for Father's Day. So ultimately, you should be looking at what campaigns are driving the most revenue. This is the number one KPI that you have to focus on if your goal is to drive more revenue, but you also want to make sure that you're balancing that with looking at what content is driving the most engagement, because ultimately you want to make sure that you're keeping your subscribers engaged every single month. And then the last thing we're going to look at when it comes to our campaigns is our lowest performers. So when we look at our lowest performing campaigns here, the campaigns that drove the least amount of revenue over the last 30 days, the two campaigns that drove the least amount of revenue are our newsletter campaigns. So this is a weekly newsletter that the brand is sending, and these campaigns are overwhelmingly not driving people to go and purchase. But what we can see really clearly is these newsletter campaigns are actually some of our highest engagement campaigns. So when I look at this data, my takeaway isn't to stop sending these newsletter campaigns or even start sending more of these newsletter campaigns because people care about them. My takeaway is, what can we change about the format of how we present this newsletter that's going to help us drive more revenue? Because we know that people care about the content because they're opening it at a very high rate and they're clicking at a high rate, but they're not purchasing. So what can we change about how we're presenting the information and the products that are positioned in this email in order to drive more interest in actually purchasing? So if you look at your campaign analytics from this lens, I guarantee you're going to drive more revenue from your campaigns every single month. I want to make one last note here for any brands that have certain products that have really high purchase prices and really high value, because what I typically see for brands that are in this situation is your highest revenue campaigns actually don't have the most purchases. So even in an example like this, where this brand isn't really the ideal candidate to match this description, but you can see here that our second top performing campaign that drove $300 more in revenue compared to our third top performer only drove 15 purchases, whereas the third top performer drove 22 purchases. And then we can even see the fourth top performer actually drove the most unique purchases in the month. So while it's super important to look at revenue, and it's the easiest metric to sort by when you're looking at top performing campaigns, it is important to also just recognize that some campaigns might have actually driven a high number of purchases, but at a lower AOV, which in itself can give you good takeaways in understanding that if you are promoting certain products and collections that are going to push AOV down, maybe you shouldn't focus on those as much. So we looked at revenue, we looked at our placed orders, we looked at click rate, we looked at open rate. What I want to tell you in terms of benchmarks, and this isn't going to be super fun to hear, but this really does depend on every brand. Anyone who's telling you that if your click rate is below this level, if your open rate is below this level, like you should be worried, really isn't in a position to understand that without doing a deep dive audit into your account where they're going to get way more context into what you're doing. What I can tell you for sure is that you should be seeing open rates above 30% and you should be seeing click rates above 0.5% at a minimum. The reason I'm calling those out specifically is because if you do have open rates and click rates that are that low, it's very likely that your deliverability is in trouble. The last thing when it comes to campaigns is monitoring our A/B tests. So what you're going to do to monitor your A/B tests every month is you're going to go into the experiment section inside of Klaviyo, and you can basically just set the filter to look at last month or last 30 days. And here's where we're going to be able to see all of the results from the campaigns that had A/B tests over the last month. So what you're going to do each month is go into the A/B tests. You're going to want to click into each one, and here's where you're going to be able to see the test overview. So what you'll see is the lift in either click rate or open rate or placed order rate for the test. And you're going to see the win probability and whether it was statistically significant or not. So Klaviyo actually does a good job here of basically giving you a high level summary. And it's telling us for this specific test that variation A that we see right here had the highest click rate in the test period, but variation B had the highest click rate in the overall send. This can occur due to random chance. To decrease the chances of this occurring, we recommend increasing the length of your A/B test period and increasing the test size. They're essentially telling us here that you should take the results of this test with a grain of salt and rerun it with a bigger segment size or with a different length of time. And in a few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how to set up winning A/B tests inside of Klaviyo. All right, so to wrap up our campaign reporting, what we're going to do is go into dashboards and we're going to go into our business review section. So our business review section is going to give us a really good high level understanding of what's going on at this overview higher level. So what you're going to do is you're going to select your time period, and we can look at the month of May over here for this client. And then you can look at either previous period, which is going to compare May to April of 2025, or if your brand is super seasonal, you can also compare this to previous year over here. So this is a brand that we actually started working with in May, and I just want to show you what I'm looking for here. So we can see what total store revenue was in May in terms of Shopify revenue and how that fluctuated month over month. Then we can see what attributed revenue was, and we can see the percentage of total revenue that's coming from email. So it's just under 40% here, and this is up 9% month over month. Now, if we go into message type breakdown, we're going to see again that 84K in terms of attributed revenue. And here's where we're going to see that in our first month working with this brand, our campaign revenue was 43K, and that was up 54% month over month. And then our flow revenue, which we'll talk about in a second, was down 16%. So we understand that our campaign revenue was up 54%, which is great. Now we want to understand why was it up 54%. So that's where right underneath here, you're going to be able to see our overview for our campaign revenue, where we're just going to see the conversion value, the revenue, and the total recipients. And then we're going to be able to see our metrics over here. So when we look at our metrics here, here's exactly where we're going to be able to understand why was revenue up so much. So what we can see here is the total recipients of campaigns was only up 3.5%. So we know that revenue wasn't up so much because we just sent so many more emails, or we sent to so many more people. We can see that unique opens were up 13.6%, which can be a function of improving deliverability and the segments that we're sending to. Open rates were up 9.8%. Unique clicks were up 15.6%, and click rate was up 11%. Something I want to point out here, which is going to be super helpful for everyone watching this, is you want to optimize for unique clicks. At Dispatch, the way that we are able to drive more revenue for every single client that we take on is we optimize for our unique metrics, not our metric rates. So we want to make sure that we're getting the most unique opens for your brand as possible, which means that if our open rate is falling 10%, but it's still very healthy, meaning we have good deliverability, and our unique opens are up 40%, and that means there's 40% more people who are going to be opening our emails, which is going to mean there's 40% more people who are going to be eligible to click on our emails. So again, if we're sending more campaigns or we're sending to more people, and that means a lower open rate, that might also mean a lower click rate if we're sending 3 campaigns a week compared to 1 a week. But if we're sending 3 campaigns a week and our click rate is just down 10% as an example, then we're going to see a huge increase in unique clicks because again, 40% more people are opening our emails to be able to click on them. For this client, it was an amazing first month where we saw all metrics up across the board. And here, the biggest outlier metric is that unique conversions were up 40%. So the dots that I'm connecting when I'm looking at this is It's great that there were 13% more people that opened our emails. That helped us get 15% more clicks. But even though there were just 15% more clicks, there were 40% more purchases when people got to the website. So then you have to ask, well, why were there so many more purchases? So if there was a sale, of course, there's going to be more purchases. If there was a new product launch, of course, that's going to drive more purchases than simply sending like blog focused educational campaigns every month. So that's how you can start to understand what is moving the needle here. So we can see that our conversion rate from the emails we sent was up 37%. And all of these metrics ladder up to our total conversion value or revenue being up 54% and our revenue per recipient being up 49%. And then finally, we had our average order value up 17% here. So every month when you're looking at these metrics, if you're seeing revenue going up or you're seeing revenue going down, you want to be able to make the connection to just understand why is this happening. If you see that open rates are falling dramatically and unique opens are falling, that could be cause for concern in terms of deliverability. If you see that unique clicks are falling or click rate is falling, that could be cause for concern that the content you're sending just isn't as engaging as it should be. And then if your unique conversions and your conversion rate is falling, it just means that the merchandising that you're incorporating, the offers that you're incorporating in your campaigns are not doing a good enough job to actually get people to go purchase. So this conversion value that we see at the top here in our dashboard, the 43.7K, but it doesn't tell you anything about why your campaigns performed or didn't perform. And then when we're ready to go a step deeper to understand why were unique conversions up 40%, when we go to top performing here, here's where we can easily at a glance understand which of our top campaigns drove the most revenue. And then we can compare this to last month to understand what was the difference in our top performing campaigns that drove an outlier number of revenue versus the campaigns from last month. Just a note for anyone watching, at our agency, we actually go way deeper in our data when we're looking at campaigns and flows and really everything else under the hood in Klaviyo by using a specific dashboarding tool. So we're able to basically see at a glance, like how many campaigns were sent in a given period, what that revenue per recipient, campaign deliveries, email revenue looked like, the breakdown between email and SMS, how open rates are trending over the last 12 months, click rates are trending, unsubscribe rates, bounce rates, etc. So these are all really important metrics to understand too. But if you are driving over 100K per month, it is worth starting to look at these deeper level metrics. So next we get to our flow analytics. So in our flow analytics, we're going to run through a similar exercise in our business review. We're not going to start at the flow level. And what we're going to be able to see here is basically, was flow revenue up or down month over month? Really important to understand that the biggest influence on flow revenue is going to be site traffic. Don't be shocked if your flow revenue is down 30%, because it's essentially going to mean 30% less people that are seeing your pop-up form, 30% less people that are opting in, 30% less people that are coming onto your welcome flow and then going through the rest of our funnel. That should be the first kind of gut check to understand if things are in line, because if site traffic was actually up and flow revenue is down 16%, that would be cause for concern, problematic, and we'd want to make sure we're diving into this deeper. So in the month of May, we can see that there's 40K driven from flows, and now we're going to go down right below our campaign performance summary to our flow performance summary. So right here, we're going to be able to see our overall conversion value and recipients, and then we're going to be able to go into metrics, where we're essentially going to run through the exact same exercise that we ran through in terms of campaigns. So we see that recipients are up, which can be a function of either higher site traffic, or it can be a function of more emails being added into our flows compared to the prior month. We can see that unique opens were up. Our open rate was down very slightly. If you see a drop that's under 5%, you really shouldn't be concerned about it. That can just be a month-to-month fluctuation. What we want to be looking for are like the jumps that are over 10%. So then we have our unique clicks over here, down 7%, and our click rate was down 15%. So here's where I can start to look at why was our click rate down 15%. That can sometimes be due to deliverability. Because of Apple Mail privacy opens impacting our unique opens and our open rate, we definitely want to use clicks as our primary deliverability metric. So that might make me want to start looking into if there's any issue there. So unique conversions were down 6%, but total revenue was down 15%. So I can tell right away, just because of how the math works out, that if unique conversions are down 6%, the only way that total revenue can be down 15% is if AOV is down significantly. And then sure enough, when we go to average order value, we can see that AOV was down 15%. AOV, when it comes to flows, can sometimes be pretty out of our control. Like let's say there's a big 15% off site-wide sale going on for the whole month. Then of course, AOV is going to be down 15% and revenue is going to be down 15%. But outside of that, what could also be influencing this is, let's say we have dynamic content, dynamic products that are being showed to people in our flows, lower value products than what were being shown in the month prior. So that's something that you might want to look into. And then again, we're going to go to our top performing flows here. And here's where we're just going to be able to see at a high level what our top performing flows were. Typically, you're going to see your welcome series perform best, and then your abandonment flows, like abandoned cart, abandoned checkout. And what we really want to make sure of is that there are no big gaps compared to the prior month. So if our welcome series drove 16K in May, but it drove 20K in April, we would want to go into our welcome series and make sure that there's no issues in the flow. And here's what some of those issues, as an example, could look like. So just as an example, what we would want to look for in our flows, you would basically click the show analytics button. And then here's where we would be able to understand, like, are open rates lower than they should be? Are click rates lower than they should be on each given email compared to the prior month? And then something else to keep an eye on is the skips here. So I can tell you that this isn't problematic based on what I know about this client, that 620 people were skipped and 190 emails were delivered. But I do see situations all the time where there are people inadvertently being skipped that shouldn't be. And that means that you're going to have less people who should be receiving those emails receiving them. And of course, that's going to ladder up to less opens, less clicks, and less purchases. So when you're looking at why flow revenue is down and why a specific flow's revenue is down, that's the number one thing you should be looking for. And essentially, when we look at the deeper levels of metrics that we look at for our clients every month, we're looking at, yes, revenue, but also how deliveries, clicks, click rate, revenue per recipient are fluctuating in each individual flow that we can identify in an instant when something is off. So unfortunately, Klaviyo doesn't offer a view like this, which is why we use this platform to give our clients a leg up. But essentially, what I just showed you in terms of the Klaviyo reporting is going to give you a similar level of insight, just with a bit more work. All right, and then the last thing we want to look at is our flow A/B test. So here, because we can see that our flows are still in progress, this is what we're seeing inside of Klaviyo. So we can basically look at the progress of this test. We can look at the difference between version A and version B, and we can look at what the click rates are, what the placed order rates are, and we can identify super easily that version A has a 98% win probability. So while this isn't statistically significant, for a lot of smaller brands, they're not going to get here after several months, but we do have a decent amount of data to understand that one of these versions is driving significantly more revenue than the other. So at this point, I would not hesitate to choose version A as a winner and then start planning next month's A/B test. The last thing that we're looking at every single month is deliverability. So it's by far the least sexy part of email marketing. If you're not landing in people's inboxes, nothing else matters. In our deliverability tab, what we're going to be able to see is our deliverability score. So at a glance, we can see that we are either in good shape or we're not in good shape. And you can actually see this over time too, to see how you are improving. And basically your deliverability score in Klaviyo is just based on your open rates, your click rates, your bounce rates, your unsubscribe rates, and your spam complaint rates. So Klaviyo tells you what your account level rates are, and then they also tell you what they would recommend for healthy deliverability. So we can see that anything above 33% is considered okay. We're at 62% for this client. Anything above 1.2% for our click rates is okay. We're at 1.71%. Our bounce rate should be less than 1%. We're at 0.67%. Our unsubscribe rate, they recommend at less than 0.3%. We're at 0.67%. This isn't necessarily too problematic for our deliverability, and it does allow us to drive more revenue for this client because we're sending more campaigns, which is going to have a higher unsubscribe rate, but ultimately keep deliverability healthy and drive much more revenue. And then your spam complaint rate. So you want to make sure that your spam complaint rate and your bounce rate are well under the recommended guidelines. And for our spam complaint, we should be under 0.01%, and we're well under at 0.004%. So Klaviyo will also give you some actions on what you can improve to start helping there. But what's actually really nice is if you follow everything that we just went over in terms of how to set up your flows, how to pay attention to those analytics, if you're just doing the basics every month, sending to those engaged segments, making sure that your flows aren't sending to too many people and overlapping with your campaigns, then your deliverability is going to be in good shape. Deliverability problems really just consistently come when you're not following what we talked about in the rest of this video. So at a glance, you'll be able to see recent campaigns where certain metrics needed attention. So a high bounce rate or a low click rate as an example. And then you'll be able to see inside of your flows if anything needs attention there. So the main takeaway here is you want to make sure you're keeping your spam complaint rates low, your unsubscribe rates low, your bounce rates low, and your click rates and your open rates high. And you really, really want to make sure that you are doing that across both your campaigns and your flows. flows. So don't just look at your recent campaigns and take that as your overall deliverability. You also need to go into your deliverability tab and look at what's happening with your flows. And I'm just going to reiterate that after iOS 15 and Apple Mail privacy opens, open rate is no longer a reliable metric to understand if you're actually landing in the inbox or not. So your click rate should be the leading indicator to help you understand what your inbox placement is. If you see that your open rates and click rates are steadily falling, what you will have to do is you're going to have to change your segmentation strategy. So basically, if you're typically sending to that 90-day engaged segment that we talked about, you should start instead sending to your 30-day or 60-day engaged segment and basically start sending to more engaged subscribers so that these metrics start going up slowly and show all of the inbox providers that you actually are a credible sender that people want to hear from until you see those metrics get back to healthy levels, at which point you can start slowly expanding your segments again. The last thing you're going to do when it comes to deliverability is you should check on this reports section every 30 days because this is going to be what gives you a good indication of what your sender reputation looks like to the different inbox providers. So right away, it's easy to tell that like we have a 70% open rate or 63% open rate with Gmail and Verizon, but a 46% open rate and a much lower click rate with Hotmail and Outlook. And then with G Suite, we have a high bounce rate and a high unsubscribe rate. So what you can start doing with this information is creating very engaged segments for Hotmail and Outlook and G Suite to avoid further deteriorating your sender reputation for those inbox providers specifically. And that basically wraps up everything we need to look at when it comes to all of our deliverability metrics and all of our analytics and how to optimize. So congratulations, at this point, you have a good understanding of the Klaviyo fundamentals and how to generate revenue using the platform. What I'm gonna show you next are a few advanced Klaviyo features that are gonna help you make way more revenue by developing a much better customer journey that's gonna allow you to speak to your subscribers and your customers based on where they're at in your customer lifecycle. All right, so the first thing here is A/B testing. So we covered how to review your A/B testing analytics and the fact that it's super important to set them up every single month. Now I just wanna show you how to actually set these up properly inside of Klaviyo. First, let's talk about setting up A/B tests in our campaigns. So if we go to our campaigns tab, I'm gonna go back to the new product launch campaign that we set up earlier. You can go ahead and click next over here. And in this section right over here, what we're gonna do is you're going to go ahead and build out your first version of your campaign. And then what we're gonna do is click this button that says create A/B test over here. And then Klaviyo is gonna ask us what type of test we wanna run. So do we wanna run a test on the content or do we wanna run a test on the send time? So these are both completely valid tests that you can run that will prove incremental revenue. If we're running a send time test, it's actually super simple because you're gonna have the exact same version of the email just go out at different times. So you can see here in version A, this is gonna go out at 12 a.m. as an example. And then version B, we're gonna test this at 1 a.m. And we're gonna be able to see which one gets more opens, clicks, and revenue. So that's literally all that goes into setting up a send time test. And Klaviyo is gonna ask you what the winning metric you wanna be is. I would select click rate here because like I said, open rate isn't as reliable. So that makes sense. Then you're gonna set the size distribution. So because of the size of the campaign, the amount of recipients, Klaviyo is basically saying it has to be 100%. If you are allowed to adjust this, I would always suggest keeping your send time tests at 100% just to be able to gather as much data as possible by making sure that this test is applicable to everyone and you're not just including a small subset of your segments. So basically when it comes to content, what we can test is the subject lines, the preview text, we can test the copy in the email, the design. What I can tell you is that we've run hundreds of A/B tests over the last few years and the content within your email is absolutely going to be the highest leverage A/B test that you can run. So don't waste your time on subject line or preview text for your A/B test. You want to test the high leverage elements within your content, like the offers that you're putting in your campaigns, the types of products that you're featuring, the types of images that you're using. So like lifestyle versus product as an example, or maybe the copy in your CTAs. So something like shop now versus save now. These are the type of tests that actually have the ability to move the needle and help you understand what resonates with your subscribers and what is getting them to go pull the trigger and purchase. With that said, we still have our version A and our version B here. With our version A, we've already created our control version of the campaign. This is our version A that we're going to be testing against. And in our variation B is where we're going to insert the different content or the changing content that we're going to be testing. So if this is a new product launch campaign and the new release is this colorful collection of products, then what we can test here is simply this lifestyle image that's showing the products that people are wearing. Maybe we want to showcase a GIF of different lifestyle images to see if that will get more engagement and get more people to click out to the site. As an example, maybe what we want to do is we want to test these 4 images that are going to showcase the different styles that are being released in more detail than just this one picture over here. So maybe we just want to test the placement of this. And if that's what we want to do, then we can just change the placement super easily like this after you build the email. And now what we have is our version B. And here you'll see we now have our version A and our version B that is right over here. So we can name our variation. So we can call this variation A, and this can be 1 image hero. And in our variation B, if we want to see if a 4 image hero works better, we'll call this 4 image hero. What's important to understand about running a proper A/B test in Klaviyo is you only want to test 1 element at a time. So that means that you only want to change 1 thing about the campaign. You don't want to send variation B with a different subject line than variation A if you're also making a change to the content. And even within the content, I would never advise against making another change on top of what was just made, because when we look at the data and we can see that one version performed better than the other, we need to be able to understand that the reason why is simply because of that one change. If you have 2 or 3 different things in that campaign, then it's gonna be impossible to know which one of those different things is the reason why the performance was better. So once we have all of our information set here, again, we have the contest test settings. You should never use open rate as your winning metric, but specifically here, when you are testing content like this, you can make the decision to say that I want to test this because I want to see if it will drive more clicks. Ultimately, our goal with every A/B test that we run for our clients is driving more revenue. So with that said, we always use placed order rate as our winning metric, because from the time that we're creating the idea for the test, we're trying to understand, as an example, if we show 4 images versus 1, will that get more people interested in the new collection and the products that are featured, so that they then want to go learn more about these products and then buy. So we never just want to run a test to see like, well, will we get more clicks? It always has to be backed by, will it drive more revenue? And ultimately, that's why we use this placed order rate as our winning metric. Size distribution, for most people, you're going to want to keep this to 100%. All this means is that 100% of people are going to be included in this test. So 50% of everyone you're sending to is going to be getting version A, 50% of everyone else is going to get version B. And just so you understand what happens if you don't set it to this, let's say this campaign is going to 1,000 people, then what's going to happen is only 400 people are going to be included in this test. So 200 people are going to get version A and 200 people are going to get version B. And then we have our test duration. So if the test duration is 1 day, then what's going to happen is Klaviyo is going to send out these 400 emails to these 2 groups. And then after 1 day, 24 hours, it's going to look at the analytics and understand that version B, let's say, performed better. And then it's only going to send version B to the remaining 60% of people. The problem with this is just that most brands don't send to enough people to make the results of the test statistically significant on this 40%. So choosing one of these to send to the remaining 60% is probably not going to be the statistically significant right choice. So that's where I just advise keeping this at 100% for most brands. And then you would essentially go and click next. And then just like a regular campaign, you'd be able to see all of the details over here, test setup, the settings, confirm everything looks good, and then go ahead and schedule. So if you open up any of your flows and you want to run a test on the content, what you're going to see is this essentially. So we're going to have our first email. So you're going to build out your version A of your current email. That should just be there. We can go ahead and just pick this as an example. And once we have our first version of our email number 1 for prospects in our flow ready to set live, you can literally do the same thing as our campaigns, where you can click create A/B test right at the bottom here. And then the settings are going to look identical to what we just talked about in campaigns. So you're going to go ahead and change the content that you have here. And then the only difference between the test settings in campaigns and flows is because flows are going to be sent on an ongoing basis and data is going to be continuously collected. You can just select automatically choose distribution. And what's going to happen is Klaviyo is going to send variation A to 50% of people, variation B to 50% of people. And over time, as Klaviyo starts to analyze with their AI, which of these variations is performing better, it will automatically start shifting the distribution until it reaches a point of statistical significance, at which point it will just select the winner and only that version will continue to be sent. So that is how to set up your high leverage A/B tests properly. To be able to track them, you're just going to go to the experiment section right here. Now, the second advanced feature is very cool. 99% of brands who use Klaviyo do not know about this, and it's really not that hard to implement, and that is dynamic content blocks. So dynamic content blocks essentially allow you to set up blocks within your emails that are conditional based on properties and and data that we have on a given subscriber. And that's going to allow us to personalize the messaging that they receive. So I'll show you an example of what that looks like right here. So if we go back into our new product launch campaign again, we can go over to our variation A. And essentially you can set this up in your campaigns or your flows the exact same way. We might decide that in this campaign or every campaign, we want to remind people who are in the United States that they get free shipping on all orders over $100. Whereas for any customers outside of the US, they get free shipping on orders over $150. So instead of setting up two separate campaigns with two separate segments, we could literally just send this exact campaign, and here's what we'll do to personalize that messaging. So we can add in a text block right at the top here, and I can just say free shipping on all orders over $100. Typically, if we just left this here, this would be sent to everyone. So here's where we're gonna click into the text box right here, and then you're gonna see styles and you're gonna see display. So we're gonna click on display right here, and then you're gonna look for show hide logic. So right here, you can see it says create a personalized email for your subscribers by showing or hiding content based on their saved properties or events. So now Klaviyo implemented this use logic builder tool, which makes this way easier than it ever was. And how it works is you're just gonna choose a property and you're gonna set a condition to be true or false based on what we're trying to achieve here. So in this example, we only want to show this text to anyone who is in the United States. And as I described earlier in this course, Klaviyo knows based on your customers' IP addresses when they're shopping and where they've ordered from in the past to which address, where their location is. So the property that we can choose here can be country, and we can choose USA or United States. In your account, you're actually going to see the countries pop up here. So we can say country equals United States. Now, what's important to note here is you have to write this in with the exact same formatting and the exact same letters that appears on someone's profile. So the way that you can see this is by going into the profile section and looking for anyone who is in the United States. And what we're going to put in here is United States. And we can simply just save this. So now this block is only going to be shown to people who Klaviyo has identified is in the United States. And now what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this. And like I said, we want to say free shipping on all orders over $150 if you're not in the United States. So what we can simply do here is we can now go into the display, and we're gonna just edit the logic on this new one to say does not equal United States. And I can click save over here. And now what's gonna happen is if I click preview and test over here, on my profile, I actually don't have my country set over here. So because I don't have my country set, it's assuming that I'm not in the United States, and it's only showing me this banner of free shipping on all orders over $150. Whereas if I now test with another profile, so let's say this one, where the country is identified as United States, it's going to show him free shipping on all orders over $100. So one email, two blocks, but they're dynamic and they're only showing to the right person based on the criteria that we've defined. And the use cases for this are honestly limitless. So there are so many ways you can personalize your emails with this. You can show customer reviews to people based on zero-party data you're collecting. You can show prospects a reminder of the acquisition offer that they haven't used yet, or remind existing customers of exactly how many loyalty points they have. So this is an absolute game changer when it comes to your ability to personalize your emails without doing 10 times as much work to send different campaigns to different segments. Next up, predictive analytics. So I briefly went over predictive analytics within Klaviyo profiles and how they work. Essentially, I'll just show you what you can actually do with them to help drive more revenue. And like I said, have a much better customer journey in place. So as a reminder, here's what these predictive analytics look like inside of Klaviyo on everyone's profile. So we have their expected date of next order, average time between orders. We have this specific person's churn risk prediction, and then we have our average order value. So I'm just gonna show you a quick example of how we can apply this data in our flows. So if we go ahead and navigate over to our flow section and we click on create flow, we can now click build your own. What we can do is have our customer win back flow, and we can test one that is triggered by expected order date. So we can click create manually here. And then just like we did before with our win back flow, instead of choosing the amount of days based on our average for all customers, and basically say that Klaviyo has identified that this person is likely to purchase by this specific date. So let's trigger this flow on this specific date if they have not purchased. So in the recommended triggers right here, you can see the date property right over here. So we can click on date property, and then under date property, everyone's gonna have this on their profile. We can click on expected date of next order. And here we can basically define how the flow is gonna work. So when should this flow start? We can either say before the date property value or on the date property value. Now, because this is when Klaviyo is expecting this person to repurchase, we only want to trigger this flow on the date that we expect them to repurchase. So this is when it will be triggered. It can be triggered at 12 p.m. in their local time zone. And then this flow should repeat monthly, yearly, or never. So we can set this to never, because if a person has not come back and repurchased, we don't want to be sending the exact same email to them every month. So now what we're just going to do is add in our profile filters exactly like we did in the win back flow, and basically just say that this person has placed an order 0 times since starting this flow. So that's when it's going to be triggered. And save it here, confirm and save. And then we could add a time delay to basically say we'll send our first email 5 days after their expected date of their next order. We'll give them a few days to purchase, and then we can start introducing our win back offers at this point. And how every single person who's at risk of lapsing is going to get an email at a time that is best suited for them based on their specific behavior, compared to us just looking at the average. Let's say within a flow, we want to set up a conditional split, and we want to choose the predictive analytics about someone to say that their historic customer lifetime value is at least $1,000. Maybe we want to be giving people who are high value customers a more personalized, better discount than other people who are lower value customers. Because we understand that this person's a high value customer. We want to do everything we can to try and get them back. This is super valuable to have accessible in our flows. And maybe instead of using historic customer lifetime value, we actually want to use predicted customer lifetime value. So even if they haven't reached $1,000 yet, if Klaviyo has a high degree of confidence that they're going to get to over $1,000, then we want to do our best, even proactively earlier on, to start treating them like that high value customer. So as you can see, there's a ton of ways to use these predictive analytics, and this is only going to be improved on Klaviyo side to just help us personalize our journeys more and more. The last advanced Klaviyo feature I want to talk about is basically just how to set up your account for being multi-channel. So having email, SMS, push notifications, and there's even more coming to Klaviyo soon that you're gonna all be able to have in one place in order to have your customer journey specifically built with this omni-channel approach to reach someone at the right time on the right channel. So within Klaviyo settings, you're going to be able to find your SMS and your push notification section here. It's super intuitive. The same way that we set up email, you can go ahead and set up SMS, and you can set up your push notifications feature and basically be able to integrate both into your customer journey immediately. So you'll get your phone number from Klaviyo, and you'll get everything you need to be able to compliantly send SMS from Klaviyo. And then you'll be able to get everything you need in order to be able to start sending push notifications to your custom mobile app through Klaviyo as well. Once that's set up, you're going to be able to supercharge your flows by also adding SMS and push notifications directly into your flows. So in an abandoned cart flow, as an example, we're going to be able to send an SMS first, let's say, and try and convert that customer after they abandon their cart. And then we can simply just wait 2 hours. And if they haven't converted yet, based on the flow filters we have set up, then they're going to receive our email. So you can do the same thing with push notifications, integrating it into your flows as well. And here's where you can see how easy it is to build out your customer journey to just get these multiple touch points that are really high converting in front of people at the right time. In the last section of this course, what I want to talk about are all of the ways that you can use integrations in Klaviyo. So integrations are part of what makes Klaviyo the perfect platform for e-commerce email marketing. So I just want to make sure you understand the power of these integrations and basically how to set them up and how to get the most of them inside of Klaviyo. So you're going to be able to connect all of your different e-commerce apps that you use. So basically any Shopify app that you're using at this point has an integration with Klaviyo. So whether it's Shopify, which is obvious and we've talked about, or Gorgeous, the customer service platform, or Recharge, or Skio for subscription, or Yotpo for loyalty, basically every e-com app has an integration, and there is a useful way to integrate it to improve your customer journey messaging on Klaviyo. We're going to be able to use these integrations to basically enable triggers. Like as an example, if someone pauses their subscription within Recharge, we can then understand that and have that event come into Klaviyo, and then that can trigger a specific automated flow to try and get them to unpause and continue their subscription. If you have a reviews app that you're using, like Okendo or Judge Me, let's say, then we can pass that data of someone leaving a review into Klaviyo to help us understand that we don't need to ask them for a review for that product again. So with all of this data that's coming from our different e-commerce apps, we're going to be able to have much better personalization and segmentation compared to if that data was just siloed in those other platforms and it wasn't speaking to Klaviyo to be able to control who we're sending campaigns and flows to. If you navigate all the way to the bottom of your settings here and you click into integrations, here's where you're going to be able to see the integrations that you currently have set up and all of the integrations that you're able to add. So if we click on add integrations here, if you click on all, you're going to be able to see that Klaviyo has 187 live integrations right now. The ones that you should start with are for the apps that you're already already using on Shopify and basically start integrating those into Klaviyo before you rush out to start integrating more apps that you're not even currently using. You can simply go to Shopify, look at your apps that you're using, and then just search for those apps in the integration settings here. And every time you want to download an app, you're going to be able to install it directly inside of Klaviyo, and you're going to get a quick overview of exactly what data you're going to get from that app and the features that it will allow you to incorporate inside of Klaviyo. The value in having your Google Ads and Meta Ads integrated is that you can pass all of the email addresses and basically create segments within those platforms for retargeting, for lookalike audiences based on different segments that you can create inside of Klaviyo. So let's say you want to create a segment of all of your high value purchasers. You can basically create that segment in Klaviyo and then pass it to Meta to have a lookalike audience created based on that. So I'll just show you an example of one integration app so you can understand how they basically play with Klaviyo and how you can then access all of the data that's being passed. So this app that we're going to look at is Revo. So Revo is a loyalty app. And what you'll see here in the Revo integration is common for a lot of integrations, which is that you're actually going to manage the settings for the integration inside of the app platform and not inside of Klaviyo. So if we go over to Revo here in order to look at our Klaviyo integration, here's what we're going to see. We're going to see that the integration has been set up. We have our API key here. We're going to see that the status is enabled. And then we're going to see all of the custom event triggers that are being passed to Klaviyo. So we can see here for Revo, the loyalty app, that we can see anytime points are earned, that's going to be passed as an event to Klaviyo. Anytime a customer moves up a tier, anytime a reward is redeemed, etc. And then the next thing we have here are all of the properties that are going to be synced to Klaviyo profiles. So anyone who is part of Revo's loyalty program is going to have these on their profile. So the first one here is points balance. We're going to have their loyalty status. We're going to have a referral URL if they came through a referral. We're going to have the VIP tier name that they're on, and we're going to have their date of birth. And just so you can see what this looks like, if we go into any of these customer profiles who are associated with Revo, number one, that this Revo customer birthday metric came in, and we can see that the earned amount of points for their birthday that's associated with this metric was 250. And then there's another metric saying that they earned Revo points, which was triggered by the customer birthday, and the earning amount was 250. So we have all of the metrics coming from our integration here. And then when we look at this person's custom properties, right here, we can see all the properties that we just looked at on Revo that they let us know are going to be pulled in. So we can see that this person's status is that they're a member. They've earned 1,669 points, so that's their current balance. And this is the referral link that they came in from. And now you can probably start connecting the dots based off everything we've talked about in this course on how we can actually use this data to basically create segments and trigger flows. So let's say we want to trigger a flow whenever it's a customer's birthday to let them know that they've earned 250 points, and here's how they can redeem their points and go shop. What we can do is go to our flows, and we can directly create a flow right here saying Revo customer birthday, create manually, and simply go to your metrics over here. We can choose Revo, and then we can just say when it's a customer's birthday, save, this flow is going to trigger, and then we can send them an email or an SMS or whatever we want to send them based on that. And in the emails that we're actually sending them to let them know that we're wishing them a happy birthday and they can redeem this code, here's where you can see another use case for using this data, where we can directly say happy birthday from brand you just earned. Let's say people at different tiers are going to earn different amounts of points when it's their birthday. So if we really want to personalize it and get dynamic with how we're setting up the integration in Revo, that might be the case. So we're going to click preview and test over here. And then right here, we can see what the event properties were. So for this specific customer who triggered this metric with the Revo customer birthday metric and is now coming through this flow, we know exactly how many points were earned that are associated with the customer birthday metric. So what I can do here is literally just click on it. You can see that this has now been copied to the clipboard. So I can paste this in here, add in points. And then when I preview this, this is now going to be dynamic for every person depending on how many points they earn when it's their birthday. So we can see right here, you just earned 250 points. It's probably going to be 250 points for everyone. So as I'm previewing for different people, but let's say now I also want to add in your new points balance is, and what I can do here is I can click on add personalization. I can search Revo right here. And now with the properties that are stored on each person's profile, I can access their points balance right here. Insert this over here. And now when I click preview and test for this specific person who's triggering the event, she just earned 250 points and her new points balance is 1669. And now when I'm checking for someone else, this should be different based on their profile. So now we can see for this person, it's 355. So this is a really cool and useful use case for using properties and data that's coming in through all of our integrations. And there's really no limit to what can be implemented outside of your imagination and the ability to connect the dots between what's coming in from where and inserting it at the right point in our customer journey. Congratulations on finishing the course. Even though this was a full-length course video, there's a lot that I wasn't able to include. Within each of the topics that was covered, I could basically go on for another hour giving more detail into everything that you need to know to genuinely optimize each detail within your campaigns, your flows, your list growth, deliverability, and creative. And that's basically what I do here on this channel. The goal is to give you the newest and best information on all of these topics to help you stay ahead of your competition and crush email marketing. So if you want to keep up with what's working and make sure you're not leaving any revenue on the table, make sure to subscribe. I also send out a weekly newsletter that recaps what these videos entail and also goes through the newest learnings that we have at our agency, working with 8-figure clients so that you can make sure that when it comes to campaign strategy and new automations that will help you improve your customer journey, you're not falling behind. So you can sign up for those in the link in the description. And when you do, you're gonna get a copy of the exact document that we went over in this course. So if you're ready to see your email marketing revenue skyrocket this year, click the link in the description and I'll see you in the next video.